This story starts in a shopping mall where Tien, the protagonist, was shopping while listening to the news. In Z City, there were numerous cases of animal injuries, prompting people to avoid going out at night. Authorities were investigating the issue to prevent panic. Just then, an emergency report came in about a large number of people in X City infected by an unknown virus. The X media continued to report on the situation. Tien picked up canned food, thinking it would be safe as a stock food. As he queued to pay, he overheard a conversation between two ladies. One mentioned an elderly man from the Lee family who had been in good health but had recently had a sudden emergency and died on the spot. The second lady asked if it was due to the influenza, and the first confirmed it, adding that the old man hadn't even survived for 2 days. The second lady remarked that many people had recently suffered from the disease. They wondered if the government had identified the cause, as it seemed the world was becoming increasingly unsafe. And once again, Tien remembered all the things he had bought. Now he needed to refuel his car with diesel and head straight home to cook for Han, with the deer he had hunted earlier in the morning. He started driving, and on the way, he called a girl who asked him about their future together. Tien replied that he would find a job that would allow her to hold her head high among others. As she agreed, Tien made an excuse, saying he couldn't leave Han in an orphanage. The girl became frustrated and pointed out that Han wasn't Tien's blood-related sister, warning him not to talk about marriage if he planned to bring Han along. Tien insisted that Han was his little sister and a crucial part of his family. The girl asked why she should raise such a child as her own without any support, already having suffered enough with Tien. She gave him an ultimatum: if he wasn't going to take her seriously, they should break up. Tien agreed, and she hung up the call. Suddenly, an animal rushed towards his car, splattering blood on the vehicle. Tien stopped and remarked that the animal appeared to be a dog, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a sheep. The sheep had a head injury and looked frightened. Tien was surprised that it was still alive despite its injury. The sheep then darted into the bushes. Tien decided to forget about the incident and felt it best not to report it to the traffic police. When he arrived home and started unloading his purchases, Han came out with their pets, calling for Tien. He asked her to slow down a bit. She commented on the amount of things he had brought and offered to help him carry them inside. He handed her a small pack of snacks. As they walked, she mentioned that she had completed all the tasks he had given her, such as feeding the livestock, changing the water, and watering the crops. Now she was hungry and looking forward to eating the stew Tien had made to feel better. He suggested making a carrot and lentil stew for her, to which she agreed, adding something more as she spoke. Tien turned around and saw Bai, the white dog, eating the crops, so he gently nudged him to stop. As they passed the buffaloes, one looked frightened with red eyes. Later, while they were cooking, Han mentioned that she had never seen a solar eclipse before and asked if it was true that the sky would completely darken like evening. They heard on the radio that the highly anticipated total solar eclipse was approaching soon. As Han enjoyed her meal, she complimented Tien on how delicious it was, noting that his cooking skills were improving alongside his hunting abilities. Tien explained to her about the eclipse, advising her to wear the special glasses he had given her to safely observe it without it getting too dark. Suddenly, a countdown began from 10. Han pointed outside and asked Tien what was happening. He was stunned to see a dark object obscuring the sun, plunging everything into darkness as if it were night. Han was shocked and started to feel cold. "Hey," the black dog began barking nervously. Even the radio signal became disrupted. Han, visibly frightened, urged Tien to look outside. As Tien opened the gate, he was greeted by a sudden blizzard, which seemed unusual in the middle of summer. He quickly told Han to go inside and assured her he would lock up the cattle and sheep. He instructed Bai to stay with Han, who urged him to hurry because of the cold. Tien reassured her and called to He to come along. Struggling against the harsh conditions, Tien realized they were in the midst of a blizzard. He asked He if he was all right, and as Tien looked up, he was shocked to see the sun shining brightly. He remarked on how strange it was, questioning what could be causing these sudden weather changes. He began barking in a particular direction, drawing Tien's attention to a buffalo with red, intimidating eyes. Tien felt a surge of fear at the sight. As the cow rushed to attack Tran, He darted in to fend off the cow. Tien, evading its charge, hurriedly searched for his compound bow nearby and found it resting on a log. The cow flung He aside, prompting Tien to take aim. Though apprehensive, he fired several arrows at its head. Despite hitting their mark, the cow continued its relentless advance towards Tien. Shocked by its resilience, Tien sensed something was amiss and knew he needed more time. A warning flashed before him: 0 ammunition left, with 3 live targets within range. Disregarding the warning, he readied his bow, only to find it empty. The cow knocked him backwards. He pulled Tien towards the house, barking urgently. Tien glanced back, realizing that if the cow had mutated, perhaps Han wasn't safe inside either. Inside, Bai's eyes turned red as he growled at Han. Han wondered what was wrong with Bai. Bai lunged at her, but Tien intervened just in time, kicking Bai away. He lifted Han and assured her he would take her to a safe place, urging her to hide indoors where it was safer. Tien explained that Bai was now dangerous, emphasizing that she must trust him and stay inside. As he escorted her out, Tien checked the screen again and confirmed that the number of living beings had increased to 4. After securing Han in the safe house and instructing her not to leave, Tien hurriedly locked the door. As the number of living bodies increased, Bai attacked Tien from behind, but Tien managed to lock Han inside before turning to face Bai. He rushed to Tien's aid, earning praise from him. Tien instructed He to hold Bai off while he dealt with the cow that was still pursuing him. Grabbing an axe, Tien positioned himself near a tree. The cow charged, but Tien dodged, causing its horn to impale the tree and trap it in place. As Tien moved to attack the cow, Bai suddenly lunged and bit into Tien's neck. Tien wondered if He had been killed. Blood dripped from Tien's mouth as he struggled to stop Bai's attack. Then he heard a strange sound. He saw numerous screens swirling around him and wondered what they were. The noise was overwhelming, but Tien focused on dealing with the two beasts to ensure Han's safety at least. Amidst the chaos, he noticed one screen displaying the message Apocalypse Survival Game Match Success. As the Apocalyptic game loaded successfully, Tien became its player, finding himself in a poorly maintained manor at level 1. He received the Eye of Truth as a reward and his class was B. To upgrade to a fortress, he needed 800,000 points. Lying on the ground, he woke, wondering if he was still alive. His torn clothes and bloodstains remained, but he was shocked to see that his wounds had vanished. Puzzled, he wondered where Cow and Bai were. A strange sensation overcame him, and he realized that both the cow and Bai lay dead nearby. He questioned what had happened during his unconsciousness, knowing such damage couldn't be caused by a human. He felt a change within him, welcomed into the Apocalypse survival game as his status activated. A surge of power washed over him, feeling as if a beam of light had struck him, igniting a rage within. Seeing the cow still alive, Tien leapt at it with his axe. He pushed aside thoughts of his recent experiences, pondering his newfound abilities, including wound healing and the strange explosion he had witnessed. As Tien processed the situation, it became increasingly clear that this was more than just a game. The system had fully loaded, and his shelter had been successfully established. Points had been allocated, beginners' rewards distributed, and players were urged to assess themselves. Tien wondered if this flood of information was directly implanted into his mind. He learned that the first phase of destruction had concluded, with the second phase scheduled to begin in 30 days. Natural disasters loomed, and the shelter stood as the last bastion of safety. Tien felt the weight of responsibility to not only survive, but also to fortify his shelter into the strongest fortress possible. The first phase had already poisoned the land humans relied upon for survival, leaving him anxious about what the second phase would bring. Examining Bai, Tien realized he had passed out. According to the information he gleaned, Bai and the others must have mutated after consuming radiation-contaminated plants. After securing Bai in a makeshift cage to prevent any harm, Tien tied him up tightly and turned his attention to checking on Han. Entering the safe house, he descended the stairs in darkness. Trying to switch on the lights, he discovered they hadn't been restored. His phone showed no signal, suggesting the communication system was also down, but the backup diesel generator provided some relief. Using the faint glow of a phoenix, Tien searched the room, wondering where Han was and why there was no movement. Spotting Han's legs, he hurried over and found her lying down. His system indicated that Han was sleeping peacefully. She woke at the sound of his approach and asked why he hadn't spread out the mattress instead of sleeping on the floor. She explained she had obediently waited for him, recalling a bright light and nothing more before asking if he was all right. He reassured her that everything was under control and there was no need to worry. Han inquired about Bai's whereabouts, to which Tien explained that Bai was injured and unavailable for the time being. He suggested she rest a while longer while he attended to matters. Han agreed and drifted back to sleep. As she slept, Tien pondered the absence of mutant domestic animals and wondered how this system differed from online games. Upon further investigation, he discovered a starting bonus that seemed somewhat familiar. However, it was disappointing as he had hoped for weapons or skills, but instead found that he needed another 999 points to start the game. Staring at the screen, he noticed a question mark in one corner and wondered about its significance. It appeared that the primary currency of this system was points, and he recalled the seed he had planted in the poisoned land. Realizing its high cost, he knew he couldn't afford it at the moment. He resolved to check the stockpile of supplies at home, knowing that those in direct contact with the ground had already been contaminated in various ways. As the network disconnected, Tien realized it might take some time to recover, and he doubted the situation outside was promising. Contemplating the polluted sources around him, He knew he had to address them soon. Looking outside, he opened a door in the safe house and found an array of guns neatly arranged. Starting the diesel generator, Tien loaded a pistol and placed a walkie-talkie near Han before leaving. Driving his car at high speed, he inadvertently attracted numerous mutated animals toward him and resolved to deal with them quickly. Suddenly, a military truck approached from behind, overtaking Tien and blocking his path. The truck's machine gun targeted Tien's car, threatening to open fire. As an army scout with a zoom scope overlooking Tien, he observed that the normally bustling Vokitoki road surface was raised. Tien suspected military forces were stationed nearby and sensed a crisis in the city. He wondered about Zhang King's whereabouts. The soldier warned Tien of the danger outside and advised him to return home. Through the Vokitoki, someone reported that Area B was under attack by mutant cats and urgently needed reinforcements. Tien explained to the soldier that he had left home due to lack of supplies and asked about the current city situation. The soldier directed him to the designated government supply point and emphasized the city's unsafe conditions, urging Tien to return home promptly. Tien agreed, and the soldier departed. As a military aircraft flew overhead, Tien contemplated the presence of mutant creatures. Despite his recent split with Zhonglin, he couldn't ignore the post-apocalyptic world and resolved to check on her during his journey. As he entered the city, Tien encountered widespread destruction. People spoke of another looting incident on XX Street, and a female body had been discovered at pond number XX. Driving through, Tien noticed only police cars and ambulances remained active. He witnessed two men hurriedly loading an injured woman into an ambulance. She was on the brink of shock from severe blood loss. Another paramedic mentioned another case of lung damage due to food poisoning, urging readiness to administer an adrenaline shot. They discussed the shortage of cardiac stimulants due to high patient volumes, many infected by the same illness. Nearby, a distraught woman begged her infected husband not to fall asleep. They were almost at the hospital. He lamented the lack of available beds and the overwhelmed emergency hotline. Tien concluded that the healthcare system was struggling to cope, exacerbated by the effects of radiation leaks from the nearby plants. Tien wondered if he could manage to get his hands on enough supplies to successfully survive the game. The police were instructing citizens that the location was a government-designated emergency supply procurement site. They emphasized the need for everyone to follow the rules, form orderly queues, and avoid rushing. Each person had a purchase limit: 5 jins of rice, 5 jins of flour, and 1 jin of vegetables, verified with a valid ID. Arguments erupted as people fought over their place in line. One person insisted they had been waiting for 5 hours and deserved to be served first, while another claimed the spot was originally theirs before a restroom break. Tensions escalated, especially when someone purported to be the general manager of a local corporation, leading to confrontations with others in line. Some were even forcibly removed. Meanwhile, on the fringes, a young girl cried to her mother for food. Tien witnessed 2 people fighting over a scarce resource, each claiming they had reached it first, while a frantic rush for supplies continued among the crowd. As Tien contemplated his girlfriend's rented apartment just around the corner, a speeding car narrowly missed him as he was about to turn. The car screeched to a halt, and a man emerged, knocking on Tien's window to inquire if he had come from the procurement site and what he was looking for. He had noticed Tien wandering around the department store market. The man tried to offer various fruits and vegetables: watermelon, cucumber, pumpkin, tomatoes, but Tien challenged him, saying he would only buy if the man dared to take a bite first. The man hesitated, asking why Tien didn't trust him and insisting that he hadn't seen anything to buy himself. Tien, frustrated, told him to leave. The man questioned why Tien was being confrontational, asserting he was a law-abiding citizen. Tien then showed a gun, causing the man to recoil in fear, urging Tien to talk things out and emphasizing his compliance with the law. Tien sternly warned the man that if he caught him conducting such heartless business again, he wouldn't hesitate to shoot him with no repercussions. The man agreed nervously, retrieving his things and reflecting on the tough spot he found himself in. He quickly got into his car and left. Tien proceeded to his girlfriend's apartment building. Climbing the stairs, he arrived at Zhang's door and knocked, calling out to her. With no answer, he began to worry if she was even home. Retrieving the spare key from under the doormat, he unlocked the door and entered. Inside, Tien was shocked to find the typically neat room in disarray. Contaminated fruits and medicine boxes were scattered around. Among them, he recognized Tienrun's antibiotics, a product known for its terrible reputation from a local pharmaceutical company. He wondered why Zhang had bought such things. Noticing no signs of blood or accidental poisoning, Tien realized the place had been ransacked, but not in Zhang's usual meticulous manner. There were no signs of forced entry either. Everything seemed deliberately disturbed. In the chaotic world outside, Tien pondered where she could possibly have gone. The scene shifts to the outskirts of the city, where a poorly managed manor serves as a makeshift guest house. It's rated at level 1 shelter grade, offering basic amenities. The level 1 shelter skill reward is the Eye of Truth, allowing the host to see detailed information about objects and creatures. Additionally, the privileges include a remote control shelter system that provides real-time updates on shelter status and inventory, accessible even when the player is away. The area spans 30 MU, suitable for fishing, animal husbandry, planting, and construction. Reflecting on his situation, Tien realizes he's currently at a loss. He resides in a dilapidated level 1 greenhouse and resolves to earn enough points to upgrade farm equipment without neglecting anti-radiation measures. As he toils in the fields, Han arrives and excitedly announces that the seeds have sprouted. Tien, Han, and He gather to witness the successful growth, bringing joy to Han. Tien observed on the screens that the tomato seeds had been successfully planted and would mature in 48 hours. He was pleased with the progress, noting that the anti-radiation grade seeds were performing as expected, maturing quickly. With more points, he and Han could certainly survive in the post-apocalyptic world. Han expressed her initial doubts about the seeds, thinking they had all withered, but she credited Tien for their success. Tien confidently remarked that he always found a way, reminding Han of the rules he had set for her to follow. She affirmed her understanding and vowed not to be underestimated. Han reiterated the rules: only consume food approved by Tien, not leave the farm without permission, report any unusual animals, and keep an eye on He to prevent him from eating indiscriminately. Tien instructed He to listen as well. Recognizing that the anti-radiation crops were ripe, Tien resolved to harvest them promptly. He discovered that the harvest was bountiful, especially with the radiation-resistant tomatoes proving to be nutritious. Long-term consumption promised to enhance overall health, with a storage life of 30 days. Tien pondered whether they could also improve physical fitness and eagerly tasted one. Instantly, he felt a comforting warmth spread throughout his body, alleviating the fatigue from days of hard work. In this food-scarce post-apocalyptic world, the upgraded crops not only provided sustenance, but also seemed to offer attribute bonuses. Tien mused over the idea of becoming a full-fledged farm owner within this system. Unlocking permissions, purchasing from the mall, and upgrading shelters all relied on accumulating points, which were obtained primarily through the exchange system. This system facilitated the recycling of crops, livestock meat, and minerals, each graded differently and priced accordingly, were the supreme god tier. Exchanged for the highest points, these were top-tier crops, god-tier powerful crops that fetched significant points. Ancient medical-grade specialized crops known for their medicinal properties. Anti-radiation grade crops specifically designed to thrive in radiation-affected environments. Tien realized that mastering this exchange system would be crucial for their survival and growth in the harsh new world they found themselves in. Tien learned about the point system for different grades of crops where Level 1, anti-radiation grade crops 1 kiloga or year 1 point. Level 2, ancient medical grade crops 1 kiloga sure 100 points. Level 3, god tier powerful crops 1 kiloga sure 1000 points. Level 4, Supreme God Tier Enhanced Crops 1 kiloga sure 100,000 points. This exchange system provided a comprehensive service from supply and sales to recycling, making it a vital tool for transforming the farm into a top-tier military base if enough points were accumulated. Tien eagerly anticipated this transformation. Reflecting on the anti-radiation grade crops, Tien considered the potential of the 3 higher grades, each promising even more significant effects. Excited, he decided to inspect the harvest of the ancient medicinal grade crops. Observing the carrots, he confirmed their 10% maturity rate as expected for ancient medicinal grade crops. Further investigation revealed that these carrots were at 100% maturity. They were capable of clearing all negative effects, such as poison, illness, and irreversible damage caused by negative effects. Remarkably, they could be stored indefinitely. Tien recognized the immense potential these crops held for their survival and future endeavors in the challenging world they now navigated. Tien marveled at the newfound security of having the ancient medicinal grade crops, knowing they no longer needed to worry about medical treatment. Turning his attention to the recycling interface, he decided to sell 70% of the harvested crops for points, and kept the remaining 30% as reserves in his backpack. Confirming the recycling of 200 kilos of radiation-resistant crops, Tien received 2,000 points and found that 3 ancient medicinal grade crops were stored in the warehouse. Pleased with the outcome, he now had 30 gins of anti-radiation grade crops safely stored. To his surprise, Tien was congratulated for completing his first recycling task and achieved the title of Master of Recycling, earning a reward, a smart working robot of the agricultural type. As the robot appeared in his palm and waved, Tien couldn't help but feel skeptical about its usefulness, given its small size. He wondered about the achievement system, suspecting it might lead to more rewards and useful items. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that the robot was staring at him in an oddly unsettling way. As the robot swiftly began cutting the crops, Tien was astonished, wondering how it seemed to anticipate his thoughts. Could it be that his consciousness was somehow linked to the system, enabling direct commands to the robot from his mind? He marveled at its capabilities, realizing even a farming robot could be so advanced. Thoughts of earning enough points to exchange for a combat robot crossed his mind, considering how it could ensure Han's safety conveniently. Excited by their successful crop germination, Tien called Han for a meal, asking her to stop watching cartoons. They enjoyed big chicken legs together that day, celebrating their agricultural success. Han, though happy, reminded Tien of their need to be more frugal with food. Hei, their companion, also eagerly joined in the meal. Tien assured Han they could resume planting and use some of their stored food. He then warned her that if anyone discovered their food supplies, she would be forbidden from eating for 3 days. Han agreed, promising to keep their provisions secret. Tien suggested they eat, knowing Han must be tired of instant noodles after 2 days. He gave the first chicken leg to Hei, thanking him for protecting both Tien and Han. Han affectionately hugged Hei, calling him the best, before letting him go and wondering how Bai was feeling. Tien reassured her that Bai was still recovering from serious injuries and wouldn't be able to see her for a while, but promised they would play together once he was better. Han agreed and promised not to disturb Bai in the attic. Suddenly, Tien noticed a warning indicating someone was attempting to invade. He quickly accessed the monitoring screen and discovered the intruder was an unarmed 42-year-old male with a threat level of 3. To his surprise, he realized it was Uncle Nan. Tien wondered how Nan had ended up there under these circumstances. Tien stepped outside and approached Nan, questioning why he had come. Nan, smoking a cigarette, exhaled slowly before acknowledging Tien as boss. He explained his dire situation, requesting help and inquiring if Tien's farm had any surplus food. Nan had no other options. His home had been ransacked, his stored food stolen, and market prices were exorbitant due to shortages. Tien apologized, revealing that his own food stores had been depleted, worsened by a recent crop failure due to mutation. Despite this, Tien offered what little rations he could spare, expressing gratitude to Nan for looking after his family. Nan, crestfallen, admitted he had already approached many relatives, all unable to assist him. Tien then handed Nan a pack of cup noodles, urging him to explore other options first. Nan thanked him profusely, to which Tien wished him luck. Nan, resigned to their unfortunate circumstances, departed. Tien estimated that the food would last Nan about 5 days, considering it wasn't much. In uncertain times like these, human intentions were unpredictable, prompting Tien to stay cautious. He decided to check on Nan that night, realizing he didn't need the common vegetables stored in the freezer. At nightfall, Tien, accompanied by Han, quietly approached Nan's house, each bringing their own snacks. Suddenly, they heard Xiao scream. Nan hushed Tien, warning him not to startle Xiao. Xiao continued coughing up blood, his condition worsening by the moment. Emotionally distraught, Nan questioned why Xiao's condition was deteriorating instead of improving. As Xiao continued to cough up blood, Tien and Han peered through the window, Han visibly frightened by the sight. Tien reassured her that everything would be fine, urging her not to look. Reflecting on Xiao's symptoms, Tien suspected Xiao had accidentally consumed irradiated vegetables, explaining the rapid deterioration. However, Tien questioned if Xiao, being the best candidate for experimentation, would survive this ordeal. Ultimately, Xiao's fate would hinge on luck. The window glass shattered as a pouch flew into Nan's house, startling both him and Xiao. Nan grew furious, demanding to know who threw it. Xiao urged caution and suggested they inspect the package. Reluctantly, Nan agreed, instructing Xiao to stay put while he investigated. Upon opening the pouch, Nan was shocked to find fresh vegetables and food inside. Overcome with emotion, Xiao expressed his desire to survive, willing to try anything even if it meant lying about his condition. Nan broke down, admitting even the hospital couldn't help Xiao, but he couldn't bear to watch him suffer without trying. Determined, Nan convinced Xiao to eat the food, urging him to chew carefully. Xiao screamed and coughed violently for a moment before suddenly stopping. Nan rejoiced at Xiao's apparent improvement. Meanwhile, Tien noticed a streetlight flickering back to life, indicating the return of electricity and potentially phone signal. He immediately called his girlfriend, Zhang, but she didn't answer despite the phone ringing. The scene shifted to a moving car where several men sat, one of their phones ringing. They pondered whose phone it was until the owner recognized it as Zhang's, suggesting they turn it off now that the signal was restored. One of them inquired about their food stash, relieved they had enough for a month. Pleased with their decision to follow their leader, they discussed their motives. The largest man silenced their questioning, emphasizing the importance of money and action. They all agreed. After the incident at Nan's house, Tien and Han hurried away in their car. Han remarked on the miraculous change she witnessed in Xiao, how he had been vomiting blood before eating the carrot, but soon recovered, his pallor shifting from gray to blue. Tien noted Han's vivid descriptions, reminiscent of her love for animations. Suddenly, an animal attacked their car from above. Tien spotted it, a monkey with menacing claws peering through the window. He instructed Han to stay calm and hold tight. She nodded fearfully, complying with his request. Tien maneuvered the car in a serpentine motion, attempting to dislodge the monkey. He then instructed Han to duck her head, which she did obediently. Despite their efforts, the monkey persisted and ended up in front of the car. Thinking quickly, Tien swerved the vehicle, causing the monkey to collide with a rock. Drawing his gun, Tien shot the monkey, ensuring it posed no further threat. Exiting the car to inspect, Tien discovered a pool of blood where the monkey had fallen. Amongst the blood, he found a coded message. Perplexed, he wondered where it could have come from, as there were no nearby breeding farms or zoos. Tien's thoughts returned to the dire state of the city as he drove home. He instructed Han to relax and watch her animation, explaining that he had some matters to attend to. Agreeing, she departed, leaving Tien to confront Bai, still in his altered state. Donning gloves, Tien contemplated whether the ancient medicinal carrot could reverse the effects of radiation on Bai and restore his consciousness. Tentatively, he fed the carrot to Bai, hoping for a positive outcome. Bai growled loudly in response. Meanwhile, Han, engrossed in her cartoon, heard unsettling noises and grew concerned about Tien's prolonged absence. Rushing to find him, she entered the room where Tien and Bai were. Wanting to play a prank, she tapped Tien on the back, startling him. Relieved to see her, Tien asked if it was her. Han confirmed and teased him about being scared. However, their attention soon turned to Bai, lying motionless with blood around him. Han was overcome with emotion, collapsing in despair. Tien urged her to compose herself as she sobbed, questioning why they couldn't save Bai with the carrots that had saved Xiao. Tien sadly explained that the carrots couldn't reverse mutations like Bai's. Han continued crying, expressing her deep sorrow at the prospect of Bai dying. The next day, they performed the final rites for Bai and bid him a solemn farewell. Han remained silent throughout. Tien gently took her hand, suggesting they return indoors as it was growing late. Despite her absorbed state in the cartoon, Tien interrupted to invite her for dinner, preparing her favorite dish. Han didn't respond verbally but indicated she wanted him to stay with her in the house, to which Tien agreed. Later, Tien sat outside and noticed a screen announcement about radiation-resistant crops nearing maturity, prompting him to prepare for their harvest. Soon, they harvested approximately 500 kilo of radiation-resistant crops and 10 kilo of ancient medicinal-grade crops. A small robot returned to Tien, confirming successful points redemption. As a result, his level 1 dilapidated greenhouse upgraded to a level 2 ordinary house. However, Tien received a warning that his defense shelter was only rated level 3, capable of repelling small wild animals, but risky against larger threats. It strongly advised establishing a defense system promptly. Tien considered his top priority to ensure the safety of the farm. With current crop levels yielding high power, he decided to postpone expanding production. Upgrading the wall reinforcements from level 1 to 2 and successfully purchasing the perimeter power grid elevated his security readiness to level 1. Aware of the remaining points, he prioritized acquiring mechanical guards for Han's safety. He spotted a guard priced at 3,500 points and calculated that selling the grains stored in the warehouse would nearly cover the cost. Confident in his ability to earn more points if needed, Tien proceeded with the purchase of a level 1 hummingbird and a level 2 hound. Observing the hummingbird in action, Tien marveled at its precision as it efficiently dispatched fallen leaves with bullets. With the air patrol spinner now available, Tien decided it was time to test the ground combat capabilities, directing the hound to demolish a rock. The hound utilized its beam attack to effortlessly demolish the rock, leaving Tien visibly relieved by the successful demonstration. He then brought Han over to meet the hound, explaining that it would accompany her and provide protection. Tien suggested naming it Bai, which deeply moved Han. Meanwhile, in a city building, a man reported to Liang Hani that they had successfully cleared up the out-of-control samples, with only the data from number 7 steadily increasing. He noted that it could now penetrate 5mm thick steel plates effortlessly. Liang inquired about the situation on the other side. The man replied that Ren was displeased with their failure to procure medical equipment donations, which could complicate matters if reported to the head office. Seated calmly, Liang dismissed Ren's concerns, referring to her as just a girl with limited influence. He assured the man that their activities were conducted discreetly. making it difficult for Ren to launch a successful investigation without knowing where to start. The man agreed, mentioning that the head office remained unaware of their operations. Liang instructed him to keep a close watch on Ren to prevent her from disrupting their business. With that, Liang left the room, contemplating the potential for a significant treasure awaiting discovery. The scene shifts to Ren, who was walking angrily, asking where Liang was. The lady apologized and said that Liang wasn't in the company at that time. Ren was making things very difficult for them, so he should wait. Just as Ren opened a door and asked Liang what was going on in his head, he mentioned that now the entire southern region's medical system was paralyzed. As a medical company, Liang should lead his staff to actively cooperate with the hospital, donate equipment and medicines, instead of being busy with animal experiments. Liang replied that it was the general manager's office and it wasn't appropriate for her to barge in like that. He was a businessman, and his purpose was to profit from everything. He didn't believe that day's medical treatments could do anything for that worldwide disease. Ren asked what disease it was. Liang replied that she was also a shareholder in the company and enjoyed dividends. Could she imagine how rewarding it would be if they could develop a solution? Ren asked if Liang's research had made any progress, noting that even the Yanhuan federal government hadn't developed any effective drugs yet. She mentioned that she would have to visit his lab. Liang replied that he was kidding, emphasizing that such developments couldn't happen so quickly. He suggested that if she could cooperate more and invest more manpower in the project, progress would be faster. Ren said that she would go to the lab later to check on the progress and ensure she could cooperate effectively with the project. Liang assured her she was welcome and had arranged personal escorts. Ren agreed to go. Liang saw her out. As Ren walked, a boy escorted her and mentioned that the technical team had found her time in the office too short to conduct a thorough scan, and accessing the secret laboratory entrance was likely not feasible at the moment. Ren commented that it was an old issue and asked if the boy had obtained a statement from the captured scientist. The boy denied this, explaining that they were blindfolded each time they entered and exited, but they did have key cards. Ren expressed her appreciation for the information. Then she gave a card and wondered where else could that be other than those places, and if the most dangerous place could also be the safest. She entered the laboratory and a man introduced himself as 2Z, in charge of accompanying and explaining everything to Ren. He offered to show her around, and Ren agreed, saying, "Let's go and check on the progress of the experimental subjects first." 2Z led her to see Subject 7, the only one in the experimental batch that hadn't gone berserk. Its power had increased tenfold, though it remained unstable and showed signs of aggressiveness, though not as brainlessly bloodthirsty as the failures. Suddenly, another man approached 2Z with bad news and whispered in his ear. 2Z was visibly shocked. The man explained they didn't know what had happened and asked 2Z to come and check. 2Z asked how this could have occurred. 2Z then apologized to Ren, explaining there was an emergency and he couldn't continue to accompany her. He assured her that a colleague would take over. Ren replied that it was fine, as it was just a routine check, and she would walk around for a while before leaving. The man expressed fear, stating that their actions were against the rules. Ren replied confidently, "We're all under surveillance coverage, so what is there to worry about? Just hurry, and don't delay. It seems important." 2Z agreed and assured her they would ensure her safety at all times before they departed. Ren was on a call with a boy through earbuds, telling him it was time to act. The boy was seated in a room with his laptop, confirming that the surveillance was covered. Ren instructed him to scan the place for their hideout. The boy asked her to check the northeast corner for a hollow in the wall or something that could be pressed. She found it and pressed it. The boy informed her she had 30 minutes. Agreeing, Ren entered through the open door and discovered numerous human bodies in jars. The boy asked for her assessment. She replied grimly, "It's worse than we predicted." The boy asked if he should contact the head officer to intervene. She declined, asking him to wait. As she examined further, she saw a mermaid and asked Ren if she recognized the name, revealing it was Zhong, Tien's girlfriend. The scene shifts to Tien, who found that his radiation-resistant grade corn was ripe for picking. Han was delighted to see it. Tien asked her to come and help him finish the work early for dinner. She eagerly agreed, taking one and expressing her desire to eat grilled corn later. Tien asked if she was already hungry. She replied that she was too hungry to just pick corn. He instructed her to gather some dry wood while he prepared grilled corn with butter. She was thrilled to hear that. While cooking, Han sat nearby and asked jokingly what would happen if she kept eating like that and turned into a fat pig. Tien thought that her appetite had exceeded his own recently. He explained that the special crop could enhance their physical fitness, and as her physique developed, her nutritional needs would increase. Since she was still growing, eating more wouldn't cause her to gain weight. She agreed and began eating the corn. Tien watched her profile and thought that after eating the radiation-resistant vegetables for a few days, both his and Han's physical condition had improved significantly. He joked that even if she kept eating like that, she wouldn't turn into King Kong Barbie, imagining how she might look and laughing at the thought. Han commented that the grilled corn was delicious. Tien promised to make her a spicy one next. He considered that with their shelter, even if Han's appetite grew comparable to Luffy's in the future, they could still afford it. Hearing a visitor, he wondered who would be visiting at such a time. Checking, he found it was Xiao with a bag. Tien wondered if it was the food he had given Xiao and what he was doing there. Tien approached Xiao and asked what brought him there. Xiao explained that Tien had given his family some instant noodles the other day, and his father insisted on returning the favor by sending some food to Tien's family, which Xiao had brought over. Tien reassured him it was fine, thinking he had helped the right person. Curious, Tien asked Xiao where he had found all the food. Xiao admitted he had found it in his yard, speculating it might have been quietly sent by a relative or someone who snuck it in. Xiao wanted to repay Tien's kindness and also had something to ask him. Tien encouraged Xiao to ask his question. Xiao mentioned he had heard about a new grain shopping center opening on the outskirts of the southern side that still had a lot of stock. He wanted to borrow Tien's truck to go and buy some. Tien agreed, and Xiao added that he didn't have a driver's license. The shopping center was in a remote location not too far away. Tien understood that Xiao was asking him to accompany him there. Xiao assured Tien that it wouldn't take him long, making a request. Tien thought about how he had been stuck on the farm recently and had planned to visit the shopping center in a couple of days to check on things. Since the opportunity came early, he decided to go with Xiao. With the mechanical guards at home, he felt relieved about Han's security. Besides, Bai's combat abilities could handle even a small group if needed. Tien agreed, mentioning they were old acquaintances, but he needed to be back before noon to cook for Han. Xiao apologized for causing trouble. Tien asked him to wait there while he went to get the truck. Inside, Tien instructed Han to stay home and not to open the door for anyone. She reassured him not to worry and praised Bai's capabilities. Tien asked how Bai had become so capable. She explained it was an upgraded version and demonstrated how it easily smashed through big rocks with a bam bam. Tien asked if that was so, and reminded Han that she could only use Bai in emergencies in the future, as it could be dangerous otherwise. She agreed, saying she wouldn't blow up rocks anymore. Tien affectionately ruffled her hair, promising that he and Xiao would go shopping and bring back candy for her. Curious, she asked if Xiao was there and expressed a desire to greet him. Tien playfully pinched her cheek and asked if she wanted to show off Bai to others. She insisted she was 6 years old now and not a child anymore, feeling suffocated that no one except Tien talked to her that way. Tien agreed and took Han with him in the truck. Outside, Han greeted Xiao and tried to tell him about Bai, but Tien stopped her, telling her to get out of the car and let Xiao sit there so they could leave early and return in time for him to cook for her. As they left, Han complained that Tien was being mean and hadn't let her finish greeting Xiao. She hurried inside to forget about it and watch cartoons. While traveling, Tien thought that Han could be naive sometimes, expecting she would say something like that. After a while, Xiao asked Tien if it was okay for Han to be home alone. He expressed concern about the current chaotic world and feared the farm might be targeted by bad guys, putting her in danger. Tien scoffed, questioning who would bother with his shabby farm that had no money or food, and reminded Xiao that Han was only 6 years old. Even if she had a self-defense weapon, she wouldn't be able to use it. He thought there was no safer place for her than the farm right now. Xiao asked if Tien had any self-defense tools for Han. Tien replied that he had electrified the farm gate so no one could break in, reassuring Xiao not to worry about it. Xiao expressed relief and then took out his phone to text someone. Tien noticed, and Xiao quickly put his phone back in his pocket, explaining he was worried he didn't have enough money and had borrowed some from friends. The scene shifted to Han, who was watching cartoons excitedly. She exclaimed that they should use the Rainbow Warriors, suggesting Lemon Yellow Super Evolution Golden Yellow, and noted Xiao could change his color too. She hugged her toy, Hei, and asked if Xiao could be a member of the Rainbow Warriors. Hei looked confused. Han joked that last time she and Tien had seen Xiao, he was green with greed, but now he was red, which she found funny. Tien gave some money to Xiao, who was confused to see that. Tien explained that he didn't have much money either, so Xiao could take it for now. Xiao declined, insisting that Tien had already helped his family a lot, and he couldn't accept any money. Tien insisted, telling Xiao to stop talking nonsense and focus on driving. Xiao acted grateful for Tien's help and promised to repay his kindness. As they drove, Tien realized they needed to go straight for 500 meters, then turn right 300 meters ahead. Another 200 meters ahead, they would reach a fork in the road, and 100 meters beyond that, they needed to turn right. Xiao seemed worried. Just as Tien was about to turn right, Xiao moved the steering wheel to the left, claiming the road to the right was closed and they should go left instead. Tien felt something was off and shouted that it wasn't true, as he often traveled that road. It was the main road in the township and couldn't be closed without a major natural disaster. He asked Xiao where he had heard that news. Xiao replied that his friend had told him. Tien asked for his friend's contact and insisted on hearing it from him directly. Xiao urged Tien to trust him and turn before it was too late, promising he wouldn't harm Tien. Reluctantly, Tien began turning his car around. Meanwhile, bystanders noticed the situation, and one man commented that something seemed wrong. He contacted others in a nearby car, wondering how Tien could decide to turn back alone. Another person asked what they should do. Nan replied that he was ready, and their target was approaching, so they had to stop them. Liang added they needed to capture them alive, block their escape routes, and attack from both the front and rear. He sarcastically remarked about seeing if they could grow wings and fly away that day, before asking for updates. Xiao then apologized to Tien, admitting that he had betrayed him and it was all his fault. He tearfully explained that there was nothing he could do, as some people took his father away. Tien asked him to calm down and explain who those people were and what they wanted. Xiao, crying, told Tien that they were from Tainrun and knew Tien had the antidote for the poisoning. They had coerced Xiao into luring Tien away from the farm so they could capture Han and force Tien to submit. Tien exclaimed that Han was only 6 years old and they intended to kidnap a child. Xiao replied that he didn't know and that they had threatened his father's life, leaving him with no other choice. Just then, a car blocked their way. Xiao told Tien that those people had arrived. Tien shouted at Xiao to be quiet, saying everything Xiao had asked was just to test him and find out if the farm was protected. When Xiao was playing with his phone, he was actually messaging the other party. Soon some people with machines appeared in front of Tien's house. Xiao apologized to Tien, urging him to give them the antidote, as there were too many of them and they wouldn't be able to escape. Tien replied that he was furious with Xiao and didn't want to kill him, but he couldn't believe Xiao had endangered Han. Crying, Xiao apologized again, saying he regretted it, but they had taken his father and there was no turning back. He pleaded with Tien to give them the antidote. Tien told Xiao he would deal with him later, and, unfortunately for the intruders, none of them would leave his farm alive. Saya remembered the night when he was healed, and Nan was so happy about it, saying how scared he had been. Xiao admitted that he couldn't believe he had actually survived. Nan commented that Xiao was an idiot for eating something different that caused his illness. Xiao explained that he was so hungry he couldn't stand it anymore and found an apple in the cellar that didn't seem to have any trace of contamination. Nan scolded Xiao for being so desperate and daring to eat anything from the cellar, as they were all in contact with the ground. Saio replied that they had been eating nothing but gruel for several days, so he decided to take a gamble. Otherwise, he would have starved to death sooner or later. Nan told him to stop talking nonsense and mentioned that he had borrowed some food and they had received a wave of food drops. Among them was a magical elixir that saved Xiao's life, which must have been a blessing from the gods. They couldn't bear to see Xiao suffer so much, so they saved his life. Nan reminded Xiao that many people had died from accidentally eating poisonous vegetables, and he was the only one who survived. Therefore, they must go to pay homage to their ancestral graves later to thank them for their blessings. Xiao thought that if there really was a god, such a disaster shouldn't be allowed to happen in this world. He believed the elixir had been given by someone who didn't want to reveal their identity. Then he noticed a bag of fruits and heard Nan ask if he was hungry. Xiao couldn't believe someone had given them so much food while their family had been left to starve, without even the basic necessities for survival. Nan reassured him that they had received all this food and that he was going to get something for Xiao to eat, emphasizing that Xiao was still recovering from a serious illness and needed to recover well. Suddenly, Xiao remembered something and got up to go outside. Nan asked where he was going. Xiao replied that he would be back in a while. Nan insisted that Xiao wasn't fully recovered and needed to rest. Xiao asked to be left alone and then went to someone's home and knocked on the door. The boy inside replied, telling him to stop knocking rapidly and demanded to know who was there. When Miao opened the door, he was shocked to see Xiao covered in blood. Miao asked what Xiao wanted. Sai replied that his home had been robbed and he just wanted to check the surveillance video. Miao asked what that was. Xiao showed him the camera and said it was a 360-degree unplugged wireless monitor. Miao agreed. Xiao asked to check who had beaten him up because he needed to find them. Miao agreed but told him to hurry because it was his sleep time. As Xiao went to check, he thought the camera happened to have the perfect angle for his alleyway and wondered who the person would be. Then he saw a truck and recognized its owner by the license plate. He then returned home. Nan asked what he had been doing. Xiao replied that he had found out who saved his life. Nan asked who it was. Xiao said it was Tien. He had checked the CCTV and found that Tien's arrival and departure times matched the time of Xiao's rescue. Nan said that Tien was a good person who not only gave them food, but also saved Xiao's life. Xiao then asked Nan if he had heard the news that the Tianrun group was paying a good amount of money to those who could find a solution. Nan was shocked and asked what Xiao was thinking of doing. Xiao replied that he was trying to make life a bit easier for both of them in this hellish world. He questioned how long their current food supply would last and what they would do afterward, asking if Nan still expected Tien to give them more food. Nan slapped Xiao and asked if he wanted to repay Tien with such hatred. He exclaimed how he could have given birth to such an ungrateful beast and threatened to break Xiao's legs if he dared to go to Tianrun. Xiao asked if Nan understood their current situation, saying they could only rely on themselves to survive. He insisted he was doing what he had to do to survive, and that was all. As he was thinking about how they couldn't get rid of their pursuers because they were following too closely, he saw 2 cars blocking his way. Just then, he found himself surrounded from all sides. He came out, holding Xiao tightly in his grasp. Chen called Tien, introducing himself as an affiliate of Tianrun Pharmaceutical Company. He explained that he was using a special method to get Tien to meet him, and assured Tien that he had no ulterior motives. Chen mentioned that they knew Tien had the cure for the poisoning pandemic and proposed discussing a cooperation. Tien would provide the cure, and they would contribute their efforts, making huge profits together. Tien asked what would happen if he refused. Chen replied that Tien had only 2 options. The first was to cooperate, making everyone happy and allowing them all to earn money with smiles on their faces. Tien then asked about the second option. Chen responded that they would find the cure for the disease themselves, implying they would use force if necessary. Tien replied that it was only by chance he had discovered the cure for the poisoning epidemic, and there was only 1 dose, which he had already used. Chen called Tien, introducing himself as an affiliate of Tianrun Pharmaceutical Company. He explained he had come to discuss cooperation regarding Tien's cure for the poisoning pandemic. Tien regretted they had come all this way for nothing, noting they didn't even have guns, and Xiao was of no use to them. If they had firearms, they could have simply injured Tien without the need for threats. Chen remarked that Tien seemed unmoved even in the face of danger. Chen made a call and asked if they were at the farm gate, instructing them to capture the little girl and feed her the poisonous fruits. He questioned the point of electrifying Tien's broken fence, knowing it was surrounded by insulation protection veterans. He urged Tien to understand his own value and cooperate to make money together with Tianrun. Tien's demeanor turned ominous, and he expressed his hatred for threats. Chen wondered how a mere farmer could have such a terrifying gaze. Tien warned Chen that he should be grateful they hadn't come to the farm together, or they wouldn't be alive much longer. Chen dismissed Tien's warning as nonsense, feeling confident in their numbers. Chen demanded Tien cooperate, promising he and his sister would live. Seeing Tien's reluctance to cooperate, Chen ordered his people to cut off Tien's limbs and leave him alive. Those people managed to break through the walls of Tien's farm, causing a noisy disturbance that made Han unable to enjoy her cartoons in peace. She felt an intense urge to silence them once and for all. Meanwhile, Tien found himself alone, battling enemies and hurling them away at a distance. Chen, shocked by the chaos, wondered what was happening. It was evident that the farm possessed anti-personnel weapons, necessitating the need to lure the intruders away. Observing Tien's farm from a distance, a man sensed something was amiss as rocks were being explosively dislodged. His initial suspicion of explosives was confirmed, and he decided to capture Tien alive. He realized no one had truly understood Tien's true strength. Tien himself marveled at the unexpected power boost from the radiation-resistant crops he had consumed for just a few days. His physical attributes, speed, strength, bone density, and reflexes, had all significantly improved beyond his expectations. In ancient times, one could enter the Tao through swordsmanship, but Tien chose to initiate it with a fist. A man swung a knife at Tien, but he sidestepped it, feeling he was moving closer to the Tao. "Let's create some space first," he thought, knowing his physical condition was no longer a game. He targeted Chen with his gun. Terrified, Chen regretted his oversight of not bringing a firearm, unaware Tien possessed one. However, if Chen could close the distance, the gun would become useless. He warned Tien not to provoke the powerful figure behind him, stressing the consequences. Tien acknowledged, shooting others to demonstrate Chen's value and eliminate unnecessary threats. As people fled, Tien pursued and killed them. Chen decided to hide in the woods, waiting until Tien ran out of bullets. Dodging attacks, he found refuge behind a rock. Realizing Tien had ceased shooting, signaling he was likely out of ammunition, a relief for Chen. Chen remained hidden, plotting a surprise attack on Tien, hoping it would give him a chance to win. Meanwhile, Tien accessed his inventory and retrieved a pistol from the warehouse. He positioned himself above the rock, aiming at Chen. Perplexed, Chen questioned why Tien still possessed a weapon, and if he was also a martial artist. The scene shifted to Tien's house, where all intruders lay defeated. Bai appeared, having ordered the execution of the last intruder, whose head was blown off. Concerned about Tien's potential return and his perception of her actions, Bai fretted that he might view her as violent and reject her. Determined to conceal the scene before Tien returned, she hurried to dispose of the evidence outside the door. Chen, severely injured, admitted that threatening Tien with a child had been a grave mistake. He pleaded with Tien to stop tormenting him, promising to reveal everything if spared. Tien replied that letting Chen off the hook was impossible, but he offered Chen a choice: a quick, painful death, or a chance to be cured and continue suffering since Tien had plenty of bullets and time. Faced with these options, Chen agreed to answer Tien's questions. Tien first asked who was behind the attack. Chen revealed that it was Liang, the CEO of Tianrun. Tien remarked that it made sense given Liang's ruthless nature and his involvement in inflating prices. He then inquired if there was anyone else involved. Chen responded that Liang was solely responsible, keeping the matter well hidden. Even the highest-ranking executives within the company were unaware. Additionally, Chen mentioned Liang's recent disagreements with the company's vice president and his plan to use this situation to elevate his authority, impress the headquarters, and oust the VP from the Southern City branch. Tien pondered the headquarters, realizing that Tianrun Pharmaceutical, which monopolized Southern City, was just a subsidiary of a larger group. He struck Chen to wake him up and asked if Liang had reported the matter to the headquarters. Chen denied this, explaining that the other vice president had connections there, and Liang feared that escalating the issue would ruin his plans by leaking the information to that vice president. Tien thought that since the matter wasn't widespread, it would be easy to contain. He then demanded that Chen take him to Liang. Chen received a call from Liang, who asked if the mission was completed. Chen responded that they had the target under control, but the target insisted on seeing Liang and the old man before revealing anything. Liang chastised Chen, calling him useless if he couldn't handle such a small matter without his personal involvement. Apologizing, Chen explained that Tien was tight-lipped, and they had lost a few men in the process. Liang agreed to meet, instructing Chen to take Tien to warehouse number 78, assuring him he would be there shortly. Chen hung up the call abruptly, angering Liang, who fumed at Chen's audacity. Liang, already at the headquarters, decided to replace Chen immediately. Leaving his office, Liang didn't know that Tien had forced Chen to say those things. Tien then tied Chen up and had Xiao change clothes with him. During the car ride, Xiao thanked Tien. Tien replied that Nan was merely an incidental acquaintance and that Xiao shouldn't get overly sentimental. Xiao apologized. Arriving at the warehouse, Xiao and the bound Chen entered. Liang, accompanied by 2 men and a tied-up Nan, awaited them. Liang asked why only they had come and where Nan's son was. Xiao explained that the messenger had been knocked out and left in the car, and Chen had a stomachache, so he went to the restroom. Fearing Liang's impatience, Xiao had brought Nan over first. Liang scoffed, calling them a pitiful bunch. He laughed, pointing out Nan's beaten condition, and remarked that he must not have struck hard enough before. He demanded Nan speak up, promising to set him free. Nan thought it best to stay silent, knowing Liang wouldn't leave any of them alive. Nan tried to speak, but his mouth was gagged, making it impossible. Infuriated, Liang called Nan a dog and demanded to know why he was barking before kicking him. Xiao stared at Liang, trembling. Liang noticed and barked at Xiao, asking why he was staring and ordering him to bring Nan over. The other 2 men continued to kick Nan. Liang sneered, calling them worthless losers. Suddenly, Tien crashed through the roof, landing a kick on Liang. Everyone was stunned. Liang remarked that the wall wasn't easy to climb. Tien pointed his gun at the fallen Liang, causing the 2 men to freeze in fear. Tien commanded them not to move. Liang demanded to know how Tien had arrived, where Chen was, and if Chen had betrayed him. He then dared Tien to touch him. Tien questioned how someone of Liang's intelligence became the head of Tianrun, suggesting Liang had invested all his skills in being heartless. He revealed that the injured person was Chen. Liang threatened that if Tien touched him, he would have Nan killed immediately. Tien asked if he was sure, pointing out that killing Liang was more cost-effective than saving irrelevant people. Liang ordered his men to save him, but Xiao pleaded with Tien to stop. Ignoring the plea, Tien shot the 2 men, questioning Xiao's intelligence. Xiao then rushed to free his father. Xiao and Nan knelt before Tien, expressing their gratitude and apologies. Xiao apologized for not holding Nan accountable for his actions and acknowledged that apologies were inadequate, but thanked Tien nonetheless. Tien reassured them that he didn't believe in guilt by association and that Nan had not harmed him in any way. Nan blamed himself for not stopping Xiao's actions, feeling immense guilt. Tien told Xiao that constant apologies weren't necessary and suggested letting go of the idea of seeking forgiveness, as he believed Xiao didn't deserve harm. Tien assured Xiao that he wouldn't harm him unnecessarily and left the next steps up to Xiao. Xiao assured Tien that they knew nothing and could be trusted, then asked Tien how he planned to handle the situation. Tien instructed them to gather the people and stack them together, promising to bring the car. Nan asked what Tien intended to do. Tien replied that they had no choice but to clean up the evidence. After gathering the 3 bodies together, Xiao asked Nan if Tien planned to bury them. Nan nodded, pulling Chen aside and agreeing that it wasn't safe to leave them exposed in the middle of nowhere. As Nan reached out to move Chen unexpectedly attacked him with a broken piece of mirror. Nan managed to dodge the blow, surprised by Chen's agility. Xiao was shocked by the sudden violence. Chen explained that he was at a dead end and had nothing to lose by taking someone down with him. He swung the broken mirror at Nan, but Xiao intervened and took the blow himself. Nan was stunned by Xiao's sacrifice. Just then, Tien arrived in the car and struck Chen with it. Xiao screamed in pain and collapsed. Nan began to cry, admitting to Tien that Xiao was right about him being useless and not daring to be good or bad. He blamed himself for putting his father in danger due to his selfish desires. Nan accepted that Xiao deserved what happened and wished to give his life back to him, finally finding peace. He asked Tien to thank Han for him, mentioning that the candies for Han's food that night were from him, knowing they were something a child would appreciate. With his last breath, Xiao passed away. Nan was overwhelmed with grief. After a while, he and Tien set fire to the warehouse and left the scene. The scene shifted to Ren in her office, calmly sipping tea as someone rushed in, clearly agitated. She instructed them to calm down and explained slowly. After composing themselves, the person informed Ren that something significant had occurred. Ren asked what had happened, and they hesitantly revealed that Liang had died. Ren swiftly examined the bodies and asked the doctor if they had confirmed their identities. The doctor confirmed through DNA extracted from dental pulp that the bodies were indeed Liang and Chen. However, the genetic database had no matches for the other bodies, and no missing persons reports matched them. Due to insufficient police resources, further investigation to confirm their identities was not possible. Ren dismissed the importance of confirming identities and instead inquired whether the deaths were accidental or deliberate. The doctor determined they were murders. Several bodies had bullet fragments, indicating they were shot before being stacked and set on fire in a car. Some showed signs of torture. Inspecting one of the bodies, Ren concluded that whoever had done this was dealing with a ruthless character. She pondered whether the attack targeted Liang personally or Tianrun Corporation. If the former, she planned to celebrate with 2 bottles of red wine that night. If the latter, these people were now her enemies. Tien purchased a small bomb and asked Nan if he truly wanted to seek revenge. Nan agreed, declaring he was willing to risk his life for it. Tien then handed the bomb to Nan, explaining that he had taken care of the traces that could be handled, but couldn't guarantee that Tianrun wouldn't find any clues pointing to him. This was a reminder not to let what happened to Xiao occur again. Nan reassured Tien, promising to ensure the bomb exploded as intended without worry. Tien then confided all the secrets to Nan and returned home with him, calling Han to ask what she was doing there. Nan was bewildered to see Han unfazed by everything, including a robot dog in the house. Outside, Han had arranged a crane and a small sand mound to conceal the bodies. She realized Tien and Nan had returned, denying any wrongdoing and claiming she was only playing a digging game and hadn't set anything off. Tien reprimanded her, having seen everything she had done, prompting her to admit she lied because she feared he would hate her if he discovered her violent actions, worrying he might not want her anymore. He asked how he could ever not want her. She explained that it was because she had killed people. Nan wondered if that was the reason. Tien reassured Han, telling her that no matter what mistakes she had made, he would stand by her side and bear them together. He emphasized that from beginning to end, she was the most important person in his family, and he was delighted that she knew how to protect herself. He encouraged her to just be herself and assured her that he would guide her, so she shouldn't feel burdened. He praised her for dealing with those who had malicious intentions and preventing them from harming others. Han then declared that she would retaliate against those who tried to bully Tien. Nan reflected that the world was changing too quickly, and he needed to adapt. Han then confided everything to Tien, who confirmed if she was saying that she saw those people wearing red and that this made her hate them. She ordered Bai to eliminate them, and Bai agreed, mentioning how those individuals had knocked down the gate and disturbed her while watching cartoons, a color she found unsettling. Tien asked if others also had colors. Han confirmed, describing Tien with a calming blue, Hei with an approachable green, and Xiao also associated with the unsettling red color. She mentioned that Nan's color was gray with a hint of green, and she had also noticed that some passers-by were gray too. Tien wondered what the people emitting the red color had in common, suspecting they all harbored ill intentions towards Han. He asked if, besides seeing different colors, she had noticed any words or letters around them. He wondered if Han was also a player. She denied seeing any words or letters. He asked when she started seeing colors on people. She replied it had been about a week ago. Tien speculated that her ability had emerged only after the start of the destruction season, confirming that Han hadn't seen the system and thus wasn't a player. Thinking about this, he He pinched her cheeks, a habit of his when contemplating a problem. Tien believed it was likely an evolution after eating radiation-resistant vegetables. He smiled, and she jokingly commented on how scary he could be. He expressed his happiness. Tien considered that if that were the case, the crops provided by the food system didn't have the same side effects as the radiative crops, but the likelihood of mutation was higher. They had both eaten radiation-resistant food for only a few days, yet their physical functions had improved significantly. Han had also evolved the ability to perceive others' emotions, akin to a proximity program or humanoid reconnaissance device. Tien named his ability the Eye of Truth and dubbed Han's ability the Eye of Good and Evil. He expressed admiration for her ability and noted its usefulness to him. When she asked if she would be able to help him in the future, he agreed, affirming that if she saw someone emitting red color in the future, she should inform him, as she was his strongest assistant. As he gently touched her, she became happy. He then asked if she was hungry and offered to cook for her. Later, he prepared all the food and the three of them sat down together to eat. Tien told Han that from now on, Nan would also live with them and help with the farm work. Nan mentioned he didn't fully understand the situation, but would do as Tien instructed. Han was delighted to hear this and asked where Nan would live. Nan replied that he would build a thatched hut near the gate to live in and keep watch over it. Han then asked what would happen to Xiao now that Nan was living with them. Nan explained that Xiao had gone to another world to atone for his sins. Han remarked that it seemed those who emitted red light and wanted to bully Tien wouldn't live long. She vowed that anyone who dared to bully Tien or He would face Bai's retaliation. Tien praised Han for her intelligence and suggested she focus on her meal. Nan thought that things couldn't get any more intense than they were now. Furthermore, his hands were already stained with blood, but now he didn't have to worry. As long as he could help his son get revenge, he was willing to be Tien's watchdog. The scene shifts to a man watching a press conference. The speaker announced that it was the 15th day after the catastrophe, with a cumulative death toll of 38.6 million on Blue Star and 4.7 million in the Yanhuang Federation. The federal government was actively transferring grain reserves, and soilless cultivation technology would soon be scaled up for production. He urged everyone not to panic. The man's son approached and asked what he could do. The man inquired if he had read Ren's report. The boy confirmed and mentioned that Liang was dead. The man remarked about Tien being a good earner and lamented his death, noting that the mutation process had accelerated. He mentioned that the military police headquarters had captured a level 5 mutated beast in the mountains on the southern border. Jing, his son, was surprised to hear this and asked how a level 5 mutant beast could have evolved when the highest level they could research now was only level 3, or the result of his artificial catalysts. In the deep forest, with no human intervention to clear it, radioactive vegetation thrived. Even the lowest level species cannibalized each other, accelerating mutation intensity. The father remarked that their current manufacturing technology was vulnerable to unknown natural evolution. He instructed King to take over the lab there, and Ren had discovered that Liang's secret experiments had utilized many intriguing technologies. They planned to combine these discoveries with their current resources and ensure the prompt extraction of the virus. Jing agreed with the plan. Ren sat in her office, pondering that the records from 2 days prior had appeared entirely routine, suggesting that the cause of his death lay within that narrow window. However, the surveillance footage from those crucial days had been deleted by Liang, leaving them bereft of clues. Dwelling on this seemed futile for now. They needed to decide on the location of the new research institute, and Ren still had to welcome the incoming leader. Stepping outside, she greeted Jing, who arrived from the south. After a handshake and introductions, Ren noticed a man standing behind Jing and inquired about him. Jing explained he was Kui, the king's assistant. Jing then mentioned hearing about a suitable research institute from Ren and asked to see it. She agreed, mentioning a few locations on the city outskirts from which he could choose. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Tien, who was inspecting the fish livestock. In that pond, Tien had fish ranging from level 1 to level 5, and he marveled at the variety of species available. He noted that the points required to purchase different types of fish at the same level remained consistent. Suddenly, he spotted a bluefin tuna and rare pre-apocalyptic ingredients available for 500 points. Excitedly, Tien asked Han if she liked eating a lot of bluefin tuna. She inquired if it was the expensive fish that melts in their mouth. Tien confirmed this and mentioned that they previously couldn't afford much, but now they could indulge as they pleased. Han joyfully expressed her desire to eat it. Tien gathered his equipment and suggested they use the excavator to dig a fish pond together. Han agreed enthusiastically, and He joined them. With the excavator, Tien, Han, He, and Nan arrived at an open area. Tien instructed them to start digging there. Nan rubbed He and asked about its age, noticing it had grown significantly. Tien explained that Hei had already reached adulthood and shouldn't have been growing any larger. Nan speculated whether Hei had gained weight due to the farm's good food, recalling when Hei first arrived and only reached Nan's knees, now reaching up to their thighs. Tien agreed, realizing that daily proximity had made the gradual changes less noticeable, fearing potential mutations like Bai's, but reassured that all poisonous crops had been disposed of since Bai's accident. Tien considered if Hei had evolved from consuming radiation-resistant crops like Han, resolving to monitor him closely to prevent any issues. Just then, Tien noticed a visitor approaching and wondered who it could be. As he turned to check, Nan asked what had caught his attention. Tien noted 2 men and a woman approaching with a threat level of 8. It was Ren, Jing, and Kuei. Jing knocked at the gate, and Ren questioned Jing if he truly needed to inspect the new locations she had selected, emphasizing the enhanced equipment and security they offered. Jing affirmed the farm's excellent location and adequate size, intending to finalize the purchase before transferring operations there. Ren acquiesced to Jing's preference. She thought that despite his smile, he was difficult to engage with, not even acknowledging the effort she had put into securing those few places. She mentioned it had been a while since anyone had shown interest, doubting they would appear now. Jing instructed Kuei to keep knocking, determined to get Tien's attention. When Tien arrived and inquired about their business, Jing identified Tien as the owner and expressed a need to discuss business face-to-face inside the gate. Tien refused, insisting they speak from where they stood and to make it quick as he was busy. Jing conceded, attributing the urgency to the chaos outside. Ren, puzzled by Tien's demeanor, introduced herself as the general manager of Tien-run company and clarified their intention to purchase the farm, asking about his price. Tien wondered how they had found his farm already. Ren stated that they would meet Tien's demands regarding his name, price, or any other conditions, even offering him a place in the villa area of the city center if he needed it. Tien firmly declined, expressing his preference for staying where he was. Ren pressed him to hear their offer, hinting that being from the southern side, Tien might recognize Tien-run's reputation and potentially change his mind. Tien reiterated his contentment with his current situation, stating that not even a mountain of gold would sway him. Kuei, frustrated, slammed the gate in anger, triggering a security alert on Tien's system. The warning indicated a minor attack with a strength of 2 and asked if Tien wanted to retaliate. Tien declined, noting that Kuei could easily trigger a serious response with just 1 punch. Jing scolded Kuei and slapped him, reminding him of their leader's teachings and warning him against such behavior without permission. Kuei apologized, acknowledging his mistake. Tien found the situation intriguing. Jing reassured Tien not to take it personally, describing Kuei as ignorant. Tien dismissed the incident and invited Kuei closer to the gate. As Kuei approached, Tien swiftly struck him with precision using his hummingbird technique, knocking Kuei to his knees. Tien quipped that Kuei had punched his gate, and in return, Tien had punched him back, suggesting they were now even. He then indicated they should leave if there was nothing else. Jing, silent but smiling, didn't protest. Jing wrote a brief note, apologizing for the inconvenience caused to Tien and expressing regret for the trouble they had caused. He also included his phone number, suggesting Tien could contact him if he changed his mind. Ren thought Tien's dismissal was rude and assumed he wouldn't call. She noticed Tien had torn up the note containing Jing's number, feeling determined to not be looked down upon. As they got into their car to leave, Tien pondered the unexpected speed with which Tien-run had located his farm. He wondered if they were specifically searching for him, or if it was merely coincidental. Tien resolved to retrieve the hummingbird guard number 1 and observed their departure, thinking they would meet again soon. With only about 10 days until the next destructive season, Tien noted the stable output of the plantation area and the commencement of excavation in the aquatic area. He planned to develop a livestock area as well, preparing for the future challenges ahead. After cooking the food, Tien sat down to eat. Han asked him to try the sesame sauce she had made, praising its deliciousness. Tien acknowledged her effort and took a bite, agreeing that it was indeed delicious. Han mentioned how comforting mutton hot pot was in winter, to which Tien shared his fondness for its warmth. Nan questioned if they were dressed appropriately for the current climate and expressed concern about the land's decreasing cultivatability. Tien hinted that Han had long been curious about something, but he couldn't divulge further details. Nan understood and assured Tien he wouldn't pry into his secrets. Tien explained that he wanted Nan to mentally prepare because the food they were eating wasn't ordinary. It could lead to changes in the body over time, such as improved immunity to cold, enhanced physical fitness, and possibly even unusual abilities. Tien looked forward to seeing Nan's potential transformations. Nan asked what Tien was talking about, noting it sounded like something from a science fiction movie. Tien explained that the apocalypse was akin to such stories becoming reality, and considering the existence of fossils, it wouldn't be far-fetched to imagine ancient powers. He likened it to evolution rather than something supernatural. Nan admitted he didn't fully grasp Tien's explanation and suggested they continue eating. He then inquired if anyone had visited that day. Tien confirmed it was representatives from Tianrun. Nan was surprised and remarked on the implications. He half-jokingly wondered if even he, as an old and seemingly useless man, could benefit from the farm's food. Tien agreed, advising Nan to rest early while he went out for errands. Tien searched for the location of Hummingbird number 1 and discovered it was in the Harmony Villa district. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Ren, who brought Jing and Kui to her house. She assured them they could stay the night and promised to arrange accommodations for them the next day. Jing thanked her, expressing concern about the trouble. Ren informed Jing and Kui that they would be staying downstairs in one of the 4 available rooms, allowing them to choose whichever they preferred. She promised to have dinner prepared and delivered to their rooms. Jing agreed with her arrangements and headed upstairs, urging Ren to rest early as well. Meanwhile, the small hummingbird from Tien's possession hovered around Ren, which annoyed her. She wondered aloud why there were mosquitoes in such cold weather. After taking a bath, Ren felt her face looked exhausted from the long day. She decided to pamper herself with a skincare spa session after a refreshing shower. While staring at herself in the mirror, she questioned whether a successful and beautiful woman like herself left any room for others. Applying a face mask, she noticed the mosquito still buzzing around. Mistaking the sound for a beetle, Ren decided to open the window to let it fly out, enjoying the refreshing breath of fresh air after the air conditioner had been on for a while. As she opened the window, she suddenly noticed a boy standing outside next to it, startling her. The boy leaped inside. Ren tried to ask for help, but he stopped her by covering her mouth. She wondered if there were any bodyguards outside. The boy made her lie down. She thought that she would fire all those guards. The boy was so strong that she couldn't move or fight him. She had to calm him first. He warned her that he would let her go, but only if she didn't scream or resist. Otherwise, he threatened, he would act faster than her bodyguards with his knife. Ren tried to calm down. As the boy released her mouth, she told him that there was a lot of money, jewelry, and gold in the bedside cabinet. He could take it all, as long as he didn't harm her. She promised not to involve the police. The boy commented that she seemed very cooperative. Ren told him that the world revolved around seeking wealth, and hurting her would only bring trouble. If he took the money and left quickly, it would be enough for him to buy plenty of food. The boy replied that he hadn't come to rob her money. She was shocked and then asked if he was a pervert, making a fake excuse not to cooperate with him. The boy stopped her and asked if she had sent someone to kill Liang, questioning why it had taken her so long to discover the murderer. She thought it wasn't a robbery and asked if he was connected to Liang. She pondered that all of Liang's confidants were dead, wondering where he came from. The boy replied that Liang had done him a favor and now he sought revenge. He had heard that Ren was investigating Liang's death and asked her to share all the information she had, as he wanted to investigate too. She realized the boy had come to voice his accusation. She explained that she and the police were investigating Liang's death, but the clues were limited and there was no way to pinpoint the real culprit so quickly. The boy said she had taken over Liang's position after his death, suggesting she might be responsible. She was shocked, realizing she had no evidence and had made many enemies in the southern side. It seemed natural for someone to take advantage of the chaos and exact revenge on Liang so tragically killed. She insisted she had no deep grudge against him, and his position as general manager wasn't worth killing over. The boy thought Ren was right and acknowledged her intelligence. He couldn't believe they didn't have any suspects. Ren explained there were truly no suspects. Liang had destroyed all documents and surveillance related to recent conspiracies. How could she pinpoint a suspect when she didn't know whom he had been interacting with before his death? It was a challenging matter for her. The boy speculated that Liang wanted everything for himself, leaving no clues behind. She asked if he would let her go. Just as he heard footsteps, the boy swiftly struck Ren's neck, causing her to collapse. Outside, Kui pounded on the door to break it down while the maid informed Ren that the alarm system had been triggered, indicating something had happened. Kui asked him to save Ren. Upon entering the room, they found Ren lying there. The maid checked on Ren while Kui inspected the window and instructed Jing not to let the boy escape. Descending, the boy thought about how the imposing Kui had managed to break down the door. Jing remarked that breaking into a girl's bedroom in the middle of the night was rude. The boy saw Jing and asked how he had found him, as he had left no trace behind. Jing replied that when the boy stepped on the gravity-sensing device at the window, he had asked Kui to block the door. If the boy didn't want a face-to-face confrontation, Jing reasoned, he would likely try to escape through the window, which would be his only route out. The boy admired Jing's cleverness, but wondered if a mere beansprout like him could stop him. He rushed to punch Jing, but Jing blocked the blow, and the boy received a counterattack. Jing had scars on his leg and remarked that it was interesting how the bones in his arm were nothing compared to his knee. He calculated that his forearm's ulna and radius should be fractured from the frontal impact force of 700 kilograms, and his carpal joints should be crushed and dislocated due to their inability to absorb such force. Yet there were no signs of injury now. Jing asked if the boy had practiced martial arts, noting he hadn't seen any special techniques. Confused, Jing demanded an answer from the boy. Otherwise, he wouldn't let the boy go that night. The boy's hands trembled as he faced Jing. The boy wondered if Jing had ever practiced any martial arts. He couldn't believe Jing had actually stopped his punch. Even though his current physical capabilities surpassed those of a normal human, it was troublesome to be entangled with a skilled fighter. They heard people approaching and discussing the sounds they had heard. The boy apologized to Jing, saying he didn't have time to play and threatened that next time they met, he would beat Jing to death. Jing leaped to attack, but the boy threw dust to obscure Jing's vision. Jing coughed, giving the boy a chance to escape, taunting Jing to wash his eyes while he left. Furious, Jing barely managed to open his eyes and saw the boy jumping off the wall to depart, saying goodbye. Jing's companions arrived and asked if he was okay and if he had let the boy escape. Jing, still recovering, marveled at the boy's intelligence and near-superhuman physical condition, acknowledging his excellent martial arts skills. Determined, Jing vowed to find him. Jing reassured them that he was fine, just needing to wash his face. He instructed the man to be cautious and asked if they should pursue the boy. Jing declined, noting the boy's speed would make it impossible to catch him. He then inquired about Ren's condition. The guard went to check on her and reported back that it wasn't serious. The boy had only knocked her unconscious. He advised giving her pills from the medicine cabinet upon waking, as the dosage was already written on them. The maid suggested calling the police, but Jing reasoned that the southern side was too chaotic, and involving the authorities might cause trouble for their comrades in the army and police force. The maid agreed, expressing gratitude and commenting on the chaotic state of the world. Kui arrived with bad news, stating that he had checked the room and discovered a missing hard drive. Jing questioned if it was the gray hard drive that had been plugged into his computer, which Kui confirmed. The third boy was Tien, who returned home thinking that disconnecting the network cable would ensure no problems. He wanted to understand what Tien-run company truly intended. Plugging the hard drive into his laptop, he discovered experimental files and wondered if Jing was a researcher. Opening the files, he found that despite numerous creatures dying as a result, Jing still believed fervently that the world would be better than before. Tien realized it wasn't a confidential document from Tien-run. He read about the radioactive food causing dramatic changes in the limbs and body shapes of beasts and humans. These changes weren't merely catastrophic. They brought about evolution. Jing believed they had taken the wrong evolutionary path, leading to premature deaths halfway through. He was determined to find the correct path, even at the cost of human lives, believing it would usher humanity into the next stage of civilization. In this future, humans wouldn't be separated due to terminal illnesses or born prematurely with congenital anomalies. They wouldn't be seen as burdens due to their lack of strength. They would possess strength rivaling tigers and leopards, living to be over 100 years old. Whether death or supreme glory awaited them at the end of the road, they would face it fearlessly. The scene shifts to Jing and Kui, who report no luck with their search. Jing speculates that the other party may have used some means to evade detection, or they might not have accessed the contents of the hard drive yet. The mother disk wasn't receiving any signals from the daughter disk at all. Kui asked if the information was important. Jing dismissed it, saying the hard drive was from the old days and difficult for outsiders to understand. Jing worried he couldn't turn back now. If his notes were discovered, they might realize he had come to the southern side for something real. Kui remarked to Jing that it seemed too coincidental they were attacked upon arriving in the southern side and identified the attacker as Number 7. Jing replied that if Number 7 truly wanted to take action against them, he wouldn't have sent such a rookie. The person had strong physical fitness but lacked refined skills. Ahead lay darkness, with an abyss behind them. There was no turning back. Meanwhile, Tien noted it was November 21st, 2025 in the Yanguang calendar. He pondered that Jing's ideas resonated with him, but the arrogance of sacrificing human lives troubled him. He wondered if they had already begun human experiments. Tien has a level 1 Bama Xian pig cub, a level 1 Windsor rabbit cub, and a level 1 Qingyan chicken cub. When he shows them to Han, she lights up and asks him where he got those cute little animals. Tien thinks she might not understand a complicated explanation, so he wonders how to explain it to her. Then he gets an idea. He tells her that he has a Doraemon treasure bag and can take out anything he wants from it. She gets really excited and asks if it's true. He assures her that it is. Tien then tells her to keep it a secret between them. She agrees. He is surprised at how quickly she understood. Then he sees Han holding the rabbit cub and playing with it. He tells her not to play around with their precious food and to put it back in the shed quickly. She is shocked to hear the rabbit is for food and begs him not to cook it because it's so cute and still so small. Tien tells her about the spicy rabbit meat. Then he talks about pork bacon burgers, Hainan chicken rice, grilled chicken legs, sautéed diced rabbit with pickled pepper, chicken pot, pork chop rice, spicy rabbit pot, and rice with pepper ginger rabbit. Han realizes she might have to become a vegetarian. She hesitates, but Tien tells her to be grateful for the hard-earned food and to eat everything without leaving any bite. He explains that forming relationships with the animals can be painful, so it's best to leave that to him. He extends his hand, and she gives the rabbit back, promising that from now on, she will eat everything without leaving a single bite. Tien is then congratulated because the plantation has produced a rare product, albino corn, so they need to harvest it as soon as possible. He wonders about this rare product and what it might be. Tien tells Han to go ahead and play while he checks out the cornfield. She agrees and leaves. Tien checks and discovers that the albino corn is a level 2 rare item, a single-use consumable. It is an extremely rare mutated product from anti-radiation corn with a probability of 1 in 100,000. Its effect is to put the user into a state of rage, increasing strength, speed, and reflexes tenfold for 30 seconds. Tien thinks about how going on a rampage with 10 times the strength for 30 seconds is just like Popeye's spinach. He wonders if there's only one or if there might be more rare products, so he searches several places. He gets disappointed, realizing that this kind of rare product is really hard to find and can only be produced when they are very lucky. When planting seeds, the system never mentions anything about special products. Tien thinks that finding the albino corn was a nice surprise. It seems necessary to do some intensive farming to increase their yield. Wouldn't that increase the chances of producing rare products from the corn? But then he realizes that this might be putting the cart before the horse. Increasing the amount planted would certainly increase the probability of producing rare products. However, it could also worsen the overall quality of the crops and might produce a large number of weak and dead plants. He decides that he has to farm honestly and not rely on shortcuts. What he needs most now are points, and rare products can be considered the icing on the cake. The scene shifts to Ren, who is resting and thinking about the thief who came to her home asking about Liang. She vows to track him down and cut him into pieces. She curses her security guards, calling them idiots for failing to capture a single man despite their numbers. The military and the police have no extra manpower to investigate, so if she wants to uncover the thief's identity, she can't use formal means. Ren remembers that she has one of his hairs, which got stuck on her clothes. It's too light to be hers, so it must belong to the thief who attacked her that night. She tries hard not to think of him, but she is determined to catch him somehow. Then she goes downstairs, telling Jing that she wants to talk to him. Jing, who is reading a book and having tea, looks up and asks if she is feeling better. She sits down, thanks him, and says that the massage techniques he taught her were really effective. She didn't feel any pain at all that day. She informs him that she has already secured a location for his research institute. It isn't far from the main area and used to be a factory. Due to sudden changes, it closed down and was sold to them at a very low price. Its location is excellent, quiet and remote, perfectly meeting Jing's requirements. Jing apologized and said that since she came to see him, he was sure there was something else she wanted to talk about. She agreed and admitted that it was a bit embarrassing. She thought Jing, being an expert in biological research, must be able to do DNA systematic comparisons. She asked if he could help her find a DNA match for a hair sample from the southern side. He replied that if she wanted to compare it to the entire southern side, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack. It would take a long time to compare around 100,000 samples, and just collecting the DNA samples from all those people would be a huge task. He then asked if the person was important. She replied that it wasn't that important, she just wanted to find the intruder who attacked her, but if it was too difficult, they could just leave it. Jing then said it wasn't hard, and he would surely help her with that. She thanked him and asked if she was troubling him. Jing was experimenting and found that the dilution of the injected reagent was 10%. After completing the injection, the experimental subject's muscle fibers appeared significantly thicker, with cellular activity increasing thousands of times. They created a monster with compound eyes as the subject's genes had been contaminated by other organisms. The experimental subjects seemed to enter a violent state and broke free from their restraints. Experiment V, Virus B, the 34th, failed, causing glass to shatter and immediate destruction. In a dream, Jing recalled a past party where some boys were talking. One asked why Jing was left alone. The other boy, Jing's brother Jin, warned them not to speak ill of his brother, calling him a bastard. They planned to tease Jing by holding his face in water, deciding to hold him tightly until he drank it all, humiliating him. Jing's brother instructed the others holding him to be gentle and leave no marks, reminding them that despite being a bastard, Jing carried the surname Bai and had to live up to their father's expectations. Others agreed, and Jing, coughing and crying, asked his brother to leave him alone. They mocked Jing, angering his brother further. Jing woke up in bed, sweating, and pleaded not to be hurt, realizing it was just a dream. Nowadays, V-shaped viruses had become more stable, and Jing believed that once he could create the perfect mutant, he would be closer to surpassing his brother. The scene shifted to Tien's house, where Han was watching the news. The report stated that it had been 19 days since the world changed, and numerous mutated livestock carcasses, over 100 in number and of unknown origin, were found piled up in Nanchi town. The epidemic department had already disposed of the remains. Tien asked why she wasn't watching cartoons and if she had started watching the news. She replied that she was tired of being treated like a child and had been following the news, asserting that she couldn't always hide behind him. He told her that she could see people's evil thoughts, which was already helping him. She smiled and said she wanted to catch up quickly and help him more, as he was getting stronger, so Han needed to get stronger too. Tien thought he had been observing Han for a while and noticed she didn't tend to go berserk. The changes in her body shape seemed to be due to evolution from the anti-radiation products, which relieved him. He mentioned that he and Nan were going to continue digging the pond, so when Han got hungry, she could eat some snacks. An hour later, feeling a bit hungry, she noticed a small box on the table and wondered what it was. Opening it, she found Divine Gain Seeds level 4. Tien had mentioned that he and Nan were growing the nuts. She showed Han that there were 2, one for each of them. She tried one and fed the other to Han. Finding it bitter, she spat it out because it was hard to eat, needing to rinse her mouth. After eating it, Han felt very sleepy and unwell. At night, as everyone slept, Han barked a lot, waking Nan, who wondered what the sound was. Turning on the light, Nan saw that Han was vomiting blood and then turned, appearing mutated. She rushed to attack Nan. Nan managed to save him somehow and wondered what had happened to Han. She seemed so different from earlier. Nan thought she had truly turned into a wolf because of the mutation, but it seemed different from the usual cases. Seeing no immediate signs of further aggression, Nan tried to calm her down. He reassured her that he was her uncle, Nan. Han looked around, and Nan observed her actions. Nan asked if she was hungry and offered to bring some food for her. Han barked, startling Nan. Breaking through the window, Han jumped outside and then effortlessly scaled the high fence to escape. Nan was surprised by her agility. Tien arrived, asking what had happened. Nan explained that Han had suddenly gone wild and run outside. He didn't understand why Han had suddenly gone crazy, but she didn't resemble any other mutant animal he had seen, and she seemed to recognize him. Tien was shocked and confused to hear this. Han joined them, calling out to both of them. She realized that Han was gone and woke up to find her missing from beside her bed. She asked what they were doing outside. Tien reassured her not to worry, suggesting that Han might have been bored from staying home for so long and might return after running around a bit. He encouraged her to go back to sleep, assuring her everything would be okay. Han refused, noting that Han never left her side when she slept, and asked what Uncle Nan meant by getting crazy. Tien noticed her bare feet and lifted her up, expressing concern. She explained her worry about Han potentially becoming like Bai as well. Tien advised her not to overthink it and asked if Han had eaten anything unusual recently. Han replied that they usually ate farm food and also had some of Tien's box with the growing nuts in the afternoon. Tien wondered if she meant the level 4 divine grain seeds and speculated that Han might have evolved. He questioned why she had become agitated, and then asked his system if consuming the level 4 grain seeds could have side effects causing loss of control. Finding that the system wasn't responding, Tien grew concerned. Tien told Han that he would go and bring Han back, asking her to be good and return to bed with Grandpa Nan. She insisted that he had to bring Han back. Tien reassured her not to worry, promising to bring Han back safely because she was family. Han kept running and felt increasingly hot. Something was happening to her eyes. She thought about biting the throats of all living creatures but knew she couldn't harm humans, or she wouldn't be able to return to her master. A woman in an overcoat recognized Han as a sacred animal from the Oracle and felt compelled to bring her back, believing it would please God. Tien searched on his bike for Han, while his patrol mosquitoes reported they hadn't found her yet. He realized Han must have left the area and needed to find her quickly. If the military police found Han, they would likely kill her. Then the woman approached Tien, having seen Han, and asked if he was looking for the black wolf dog and if she belonged to him. Tien asked if she had seen where Han went. The woman asked if he knew the truth behind the apocalypse. Confused and focused on finding Han, Tien insisted she just tell him where the dog went and that he wasn't interested in anything else. The lady explained that the disasters were punishment for humanity's sins, and the apocalypse wouldn't end until all humans were extinct. She suggested that Tien could save himself by joining their self-help society and making a sincere confession to God for a chance at survival. Tien wondered if this was some kind of new missionary scam. He then asked if there were any conditions for joining that society. She replied that their self-help society had a hierarchy of membership for all beings, with different levels requiring varying membership fees ranging from 3 to 300,000 units. The higher the level, the closer one was believed to be to God and the greater the chance of salvation. However, since Tien was the master of the sacred animals, she suggested he could simply bring that animal to join the club. Tien retorted that she should study more about brainwashing and deception before trying to deceive people. Offended, she asked how he dared to disrespect God. Tien shrugged it off, stating he had no time to entertain her, and questioned if salvation could be achieved through piety, asserting that it was up to individuals to save themselves. With that, he walked away. As Tien left, she commented that those who didn't believe in God would suffer eternal damnation in hell, considering him the lowest of the low. Hei was reminded of the past when Tien was standing on the side of the road, smoking next to Hai's car. Suddenly, he heard a noise and went to investigate, finding a dog lying there with blood around it. Tien thought it might have been hit by a car while crossing the road. Nearby, he saw a very cute and small dog next to the dead one. Tien picked up the small dog and couldn't believe it was still alive. It seemed the dead dog was the small one's mother and had been dead for a few days, yet the small dog was surprisingly resilient. He took the adorable puppy in his hand and remarked that there were many people who had lost their parents, just like this puppy. Hei interrupted his thoughts as the puppy bit a man's leg, causing the man to scream. Some men were nearby with equipment. One of them suggested shaking things up, saying Xiao Wu wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Jing arrived and asked how the mutated beasts got in. The man explained that Xiao Wu had become addicted to smoking and had gone into the woods to smoke. He flicked his cigarette butt at the beast, causing it to become violent and attack him. Jing asked how they dared to let such a thing happen. The man replied that the beast wasn't hiding in the bushes and Xiao Wu hadn't noticed it until later. They had already contacted the military police to handle the situation. Jing asked him to repeat himself, questioning if they were saying the mutant was lurking in the bushes. The man confirmed this. Jing thought that low-level mutant beasts would simply wander around aimlessly, following the heat of living creatures, indicating this might be a high-level mutant beast. Moreover, the mutant only bit the security guard's leg without killing him, suggesting it knew the danger of guns and was trying to use the guards as a shield, which was terrifyingly clever. If they captured and studied it, they might be able to break through the instability of the V-virus. This was the perfect mutant beast Jing had been looking for. Jing ordered them to gather all available men and capture the mutant beast alive before the military police arrived. They were to be equipped with tranquilizer guns and sedatives, emphasizing that the beast had to be captured alive. Jing distributed guns to everyone and cautioned them to be careful, aiming for the limbs. As they fired shots, Hei managed to dodge some but was hit and started running away. Jing ordered them to chase after him. Meanwhile, Tien was at home when the second hummingbird report came in, indicating large dog paw prints found approximately 700 meters southeast. Tien rushed to the location and examined the paw prints. He noticed traces of fresh blood and deduced that they had not been there long, likely belonging to Hei. He wondered what had happened and how Hei had been injured so severely. The people from Jing's group were chasing Rao, the dog, in their cars. Jing thought that no mutated animal could move so fast, and he was excited to observe its muscular tone while running, admiring the creature's beauty. He was determined to catch the dog. Meanwhile, Tien spotted Hei and ordered the hummingbird to show him. He saw Hei being chased by cars, and upon zooming in, he recognized Jing among the people in the cars. Tien wondered why Jing was after Hei and if he wanted to capture Hei for research. Tien took out an alband core from his inventory, determined that those people wouldn't get away with it. The pursuers were shooting at Hei, who dodged their attacks as he continued ahead. Jing contacted the other two cars in his group and instructed them to surround Hei from both sides, aiming to drive him into the old factory up ahead. They agreed and moved into position. As they prepared to execute the plan, Hei spotted them and used a tree for support to jump over one of the cars, causing it to crash. A man fired a bullet towards Hei, but Tien swiftly moved in with white light blazing around him, using his power to intercept and block the shot. He realized that after consuming the alband core and entering a frenzy state, he had 26 seconds remaining before it wore off. Hei wondered if the person blocking the shot was Tien. Jing was astonished to see the white light surrounding Tien. Tien knew he had only 26 seconds left and swiftly moved to take down all the men before the effect wore off completely. Jing was shocked by Tien's sudden prowess. With just 5 seconds remaining, Tien closed in and delivered a powerful punch, causing Jing to fall. As the 26 seconds elapsed, Tien moved back. Sensing there might be side effects from using the alband core, Jing realized how close he had come to danger and decided Tien was too dangerous to be left alive, aiming his gun at Tien. The bullet hit Tien just as Hei launched an attack on Jing. As Tien regained consciousness, he found himself lying on top of Hei, who was walking at the time. He asked how Hei was doing. Trying to access the system, Tien discovered it wasn't responding. He then noticed something white appearing around He and capturing him. Tien wondered what it was. The scene shifted to Jing, who was lying down receiving treatment. Someone apologized, explaining that the situation had been dire. Jing had suffered a severe blow to the head, causing confusion in his pituitary gland and squeezing the blood vessels in his brain, including a fatal wound to his neck. It was considered miraculous that Jing had survived thus far. Another person apologized to Ren, stating they had done their best, but Jing's prognosis remained uncertain. Ren interrupted, reminding them it was their duty as guards to protect researcher Jing's safety with their lives. Now Jing lay in a hospital bed, his fate hanging in the balance. Another man apologized to Ren, explaining that Jing was determined to capture the mutant animals and had taken off first with the advance team. By the time they arrived, the advance team had already suffered heavy losses, with only Dekui managing to survive. Ren cut him off, saying she didn't want to hear excuses. She asked if the man had witnessed the attacks firsthand. He denied it, saying it was too fast, just a white light. Ren turned sharply to him, warning him to come up with a credible story before trying to deceive anyone. The man apologized again, insisting he wasn't lying. Ren reminded him they were paid well, and she wasn't interested in hearing him shirk responsibility. The doctor reported that Jing's condition was deteriorating, with his heart rate dropping and another hematoma found in his brain. Ren instructed them to do everything possible to save him. The doctor replied that it was futile, and Jing couldn't be saved. Ren insisted they give him a shot of adrenaline so he could communicate any last thoughts. Jing managed to open his eyes and called out to Da Kui, who confirmed he was there. Jing requested to be injected with the V-shaped virus. Da Kui refused, explaining that there had been no successful human trials, and if it failed, Jing would not rest peacefully in his grave with a complete human body. Jing argued that dying as a human or a monster was the same to him, and he didn't want to lose like this. They decided to inject 5 ml of the V-shaped virus into Jing and prepare shackles and a bomb neck collar. They asked Jing if he wanted them to call his family. Jing replied that there was no need. His family was just those who shared his blood, but that wasn't his home. He instructed them to proceed. As the doctors injected the V-shaped virus into him, Jing screamed loudly, his body convulsing. Ren was surprised by the intensity of his reaction, while Da Kui remained silent, hoping for the best. The scene shifted to Tien, where He was encased in the white substance that suddenly broke apart. He evolved into a half-man and emerged outside. Tien wonders where He is. He taps Tien on the shoulder. The scene shifts to Han and Nan. Nan tells Han to go to bed and not wait for Tien. He mentions that He couldn't have gone far, and Tien will bring him back soon. It would be bad if she caught a cold in such cold weather. She replied that she wouldn't catch a cold because she was healthy and would wait for Tien to come back. She asks Grandpa Nan to hold her hand because it was warm. As he holds it, he finds it really warm and is amazed at how much a person's health can improve by eating food from the farm. She tells him she's an evolved superwoman. Nan takes her to sit on his lap, saying he'll accompany her while they wait for Tien. As they wait, morning comes, and they both fall asleep sitting like that. Han hears a sound, rushes outside, calls for Tien, and asks if he found He. She then sees He carrying Tien and asks him what happened to Tien. Tien replied that he had brought He back. Nan arrived and was surprised by this. Then Tien helped He put on normal human clothes. As Han looked at He from all sides, she commented that He had changed a lot. The fur was so thick, but He still had the familiar blue color. He lifted her to sit on his shoulder, thinking Han was still so naughty. Tien learned that He was a Czech wolf dog with human genes, genetically evolved with potentially unlimited data improvement. Tien understood that He had lost control previously due to atavistic genes, causing him to go berserk, which is why he had escaped to avoid hurting them. Integrating human genetics could have occurred during that time. As Tien was injured, Nan brought the medicine box. Tien asked to sterilize the knife and then dig out the bullet. Nan gave it to him and asked if Tien was going to dig it out directly and what if it got infected. Tien told him to just leave everything. Tien dug out the bullet and considered retrieving ancient-grade medicinal carrots. He produced a carrot in his hand, shocking Nan with its sudden appearance. Tien ate it, and Nan wondered if it was a miracle cure. The wound on Tien's shoulder healed and his broken bone restored, leaving only pain behind. Tien thought about how genetic cells in all living creatures constantly replace and divide on the plateau. Old cells die, and new ones replace them to sustain life. During this process of division and replication, cells are mostly stable and faithfully replicate all elements of the old cell. However, under certain conditions, stability may be disrupted, and a new generation of cells may suddenly appear at a site, replacing the original generation. This is known as a genetic mutation. Genetic mutations are categorized into 2 outcomes. The first being beneficial development. like Tien, Han, and He, which allows their bodies to gain new and advantageous functions in addition to their original functions. Tien considered this as evolution. The second outcome was bad development, like many mutated animals in the world currently. They have terrifyingly strong limbs and great strength, but their genes contain fatal flaws. Even if they are lucky enough to regain their senses, they won't live long. That's just the harsh reality of survival. The scene shifts to Jing waking up and wondering if he survived. Others said it was a miracle, as no human had ever remained conscious after being injected with the V virus. Jing's survival at that time meant their experiment would move to the next stage, and he was congratulated for it. Jing explained that it wasn't simple. Even though he survived, it didn't mean that the V-shaped virus mutated him perfectly. His mutation still failed, and while he had greater strength and speed compared to normal, his body structure was still altered for the worse. At most, he had 7 days to live if he couldn't find a perfectly mutated creature and obtain its DNA by the second day. He was still facing death. Tien prepared himself, his upper body ribs forming a protective structure on his back. Dakwei arrived and informed them that a detective from the Southern Military Police Bureau was present. He questioned whether it would be appropriate for them to investigate the intruder and alert the military. Jing responded by stating his proficiency in boxing, Muay Thai, Sambo, grappling, Sanshou, and several other deadly martial arts. He also possessed a 65-kilo golden dragon badge from the Federal Sanshou Association. His reflexes and physical fitness were more than 2.8 times that of an average adult. In other words, he could already be considered one of the strongest people in the world, and there were few who could defeat him head-on. However, the person who attacked him couldn't be considered human at all. His power source was similar to that of the perfect mutant wolf dog, indicating he might also be a perfect mutant. Perhaps their perfect mutations originated from the same source, which could explain why he came to rescue the wolf dog. That person's movements reminded Jing of the other guy from before. Dakwei asked if Jing suspected that those two were the same person, but wondered if it was wise to reveal their hard-earned research results. Jing replied that he knew what he was doing. The V virus hadn't allowed him to achieve perfect evolution yet, but if that information could lead him to the perfect mutant, he could afford to take the risk. After all, he didn't have much time left. He then went to meet Detective Yuan and apologized for keeping her waiting, hoping his appearance didn't frighten her. She reassured him it didn't and asked if what he had to tell the military would be of interest to her. He excused himself and unbuttoned his shirt to reveal the changes in his body, explaining he was in a state that would normally be impossible to survive. The additional bone spurs continued to grow as his body developed, and if his heart were pierced, that would be the end for him. Time was running out. And in exchange, he expected her full assistance in finding that person as soon as possible. She agreed, expressing pleasure in working with them. The scene shifts to Tien sitting on his farm, where he purchased 19 divine-level powerful seeds. He considered the level 4 divine-level powerful seed category, such as the cherry tomato. Its soil requirements included fertile, high-quality land, with daily irrigation using pure water. The growth cycle spanned 18 days with a survival rate of 18%. Its effects included promoting genetic fission, enhancing beneficial genetic development, preventing negative genetic developments, and promoting evolution. Tien explained that in other words, the primary focus of level 4 seeds was to promote evolution, which he saw as the key to a new era for mankind. He wondered if, in the future, humans could become gods with such advancements. Would he be the god who created the gods? He found the planting conditions to be harsh, realizing he needed to spend a lot of points to level up the land. Despite its expense, he proceeded with the purchase. He spent 95,000 points to purchase 19 good land upgrade coupons, leaving him with 5,680,000 points. Now, 19 ordinary lands had been upgraded to good land. He noted the nutrient-rich black soil, capable of growing crops above level 4 and boosting yields for crops below level 3. Aware that there wasn't much time left before the second wave of the destruction season arrived, he considered growth agents, which were also costly. He purchased 12 growth agents, knowing their limited effectiveness in promoting the ripening of level 4 crops. He planned to add more agricultural robots to speed up planting and still needed to save points to buy ordinary seeds to upgrade his farm. All the small robots were busy farming, and Tien knew he had to do his best to harvest as many ripe crops as possible before the second wave of the destruction season arrived. The scene shifts to the city, where two men in white coats covering their heads enter a building. The first man asks the second if it would be possible for someone as humble as Immaculate Eagle to meet the Holy Lord as a human being. The second man replies that the first man needs to tell the Holy Lord what he saw, and the Holy Lord will pass judgment. Despite not attracting the required number of believers that week, if the information is true, they could still receive gifts from the Holy Lord. The first man remarks how wonderful this is and thanks him, noting that his family could survive another month. Only those who devoutly worship the Holy Lord can survive in the apocalypse. They continue walking and talking, arriving at a hall where the first man informs the Holy Lord that the pure sheep sent a letter stating that a new holy beast has been discovered. They notice two individuals already present in the hall, one of whom asks the man in the coat to elaborate on the news. He then clapped and said that it was good, and it would make the Holy Lord even more powerful. The man in the coat congratulated the Holy Lord, saying that with the nourishment of the new holy beast, the Holy Lord would soon complete his emergence. He asked if he could inspect the recent arrivals. The man next to him agreed, mentioning that the Holy Lord had grown tired of eating small desserts, and all they needed to do was bring back the sacred beast and sacrifice it to the Holy Lord after his emergence. Behind them, a voice from a hooded figure spoke, saying he wanted something. A man replied that he understood and thanked the Lord for his kindness. The figure insisted again that he wanted to eat the wolf cubs. The scene shifts to Tien, who was watching the news. A lady anchor reports breaking news of a train accident on a mountain highway in the southern suburbs. A private car plunged about 100 meters down a cliff on a mountain road bend, rolled over, and exploded. Yang verified that there were 3 people in the car, 2 adults and a child. Local firefighters arrived at the scene. The 2 adults were found dead in the car, but the child was discovered hanging from a tree branch near the incident site. Miraculously, she survived and had been taken to a local hospital for treatment. Tien was cutting vegetables and felt deeply saddened for the child. He commented on how unfair it was for someone so young to suffer the loss of both parents. Then, Tien wondered what time it was. He thought about his parents, who had said they would be home by 3 p.m. It was getting late, and he wondered why they hadn't returned yet. He called them but found that their phone numbers were off. As he prepared the food, he kept trying to call, but their phones remained off. The scene then shifts to his car, where a fire breaks out and firefighters struggle to contain it, awaiting additional fire trucks. They discover the child, Han, unconscious while hanging from a tree. They quickly rescue her, mindful of her young age and a slight fracture, handling her gently as they transport her to the hospital for treatment. At the hospital, they wonder if Han has spoken yet. Being so young, she likely doesn't remember the incident clearly and may have been traumatized. One nurse speculates about her family, while another mentions checking with the local authorities and discovering that Han was an orphan adopted just 2 days ago. Another nurse expresses surprise, questioning if her adoptive parents were among the deceased and remarking on the unfortunate circumstances. A colleague suggests halting the discussion, noting irregularities in the adoption process and the informal nature of the orphanage from which Han was taken without proper procedures. One nurse asked another if the police had notified the deceased's family. The second nurse replied affirmatively, stating that the family had been informed and would soon arrive. Yuen arrived and asked where the morgue was located. The nurse inquired if she had come to claim the bodies. Yuen, accompanied by Tien, requested the nurse to guide them. The nurse agreed and led them to view the 2 deceased bodies. Yuan asked Tien to accept her condolences. He clarified that they weren't his parents, and there must have been a mistake because only the 2 of them had gone out. He questioned where the child had come from. Yuan apologized, expressing understanding of his feelings and suggesting a DNA test to confirm. Tien agreed, stating that his parents must have simply disappeared. Yuan asked him to wait outside until the results were available. While Tien waited outside, Han approached and apologized, feeling responsible because if she hadn't sought help from her aunt when the dean hit her, her uncle and aunt wouldn't have taken her in, and none of this would have happened. Tien hugged her and reassured her that it wasn't her fault. Yuen arrived and informed Tien that the parent-child DNA relationship was confirmed to be 99%. She expressed her condolences, and Tien, overwhelmed with emotion, hugged Han tightly. Suddenly, a woman rushed to Jing, announcing that the results were in. The intruder was identified as Tien, 26 years old, a graduate of Jingnan Normal University with outstanding academic achievements. 2 years ago, his parents had adopted a 4-year-old girl. Sadly, both parents had died in a car accident. Tien had returned to the southern suburbs from Jingnan province, inherited his parents' farm, and had been living there since. Jing asked if that was all, and the woman confirmed that there was nothing particularly remarkable about Tien's background. Even if the DNA test proved he stole the USB flash drive, how could they be certain he was the one who attacked Jing? Jing noted Tien appeared exceedingly ordinary, yet an ordinary person would likely not have been able to overpower him without a struggle. That night, Tien had demonstrated remarkable physical prowess. It was simply not something an ordinary person, who had been mediocre for over 20 years, could have achieved. If that man had been in hiding for more than 20 years, judging from his skills, he was quite inexperienced, so any such possibility could be ruled out. That leaves only the second explanation: Tien's physical fitness had recently improved dramatically, and the only thing that could explain that was perfect mutations. This also explains why the other party reached out to help the perfectly mutated wolf dog, as their powers originated from the same source. The power of an organization capable of creating two perfect mutants was too terrifying. The woman asked if their initial thinking might have strayed, suggesting that perhaps the power of perfect mutation was caused by something other than science. Jing asked if she was implying that the other party's perfect mutation wasn't caused by the V-shaped virus. Tien replied that the chances of a V-shaped virus causing a perfect mutation in a living creature were only 1 in 100 million. There were only about a dozen perfect mutants worldwide, including the Beastmaster. How was it possible then that there were 2 perfect mutations in the southern suburbs? That success rate was extraordinarily high and didn't align with the probabilities at all. Jing explained that in their world, there existed a second key that allowed for perfect mutations. The scene shifts to an office where a man was sitting. Yuan handed him the files. The man remarked that if there truly was a case of successful human evolution, their military would also be interested and would likely send someone to monitor both parties. Yuan agreed with his assessment. The scene shifts to Tien in the field where he purchased 2 growth agents. After spreading them in the field, he noticed that the ripening time of the level 4 divine crops was reduced by 50%, with the remaining time until maturity now at 128 hours. Nan called Tien and expressed concern about hay. Tien asked what was wrong. Nan explained that recently, Hay had been staying on the roof, and that day wouldn't come down no matter how loudly Nan yelled. Normally, Hay would obediently come down when called, but that day was different. He was standing on the roof, looking around. Tien thought the behavior was reminiscent of the eve of the first destruction season, and speculated that Hay's sense of danger had increased since his atavistic evolution. He decided to have the hummingbird guards search a kilometer radius around the farm. Tien wondered aloud about the absurdity of receiving text messages at such a time, questioning what kind of telecommunications company would still be operating in the midst of an apocalypse. Tien checked his phone and was shocked by what he saw, causing a basket of fruits to fall from his hands. Nan and Han wondered what had happened. Tien questioned if it was a prank and who would play such a tasteless joke. Han called out to him, but Tien swiftly jumped into his truck and drove away from the house. Meanwhile, Jing observed Tien leaving the farm and noted it. Doc Wei, who was monitoring the screens, commented that using a high-end spy plane like the UBTWZ's stealth drone to watch over a farm seemed excessive. They continued monitoring the farm, and Jing instructed Doc Wei to focus on a specific area. Doc Wei asked what he was looking at. Jing explained they were miniature unmanned reconnaissance drones. He found it surprising that such micro-devices were present on a rundown farm. Jing also pointed out that the farm's crops could thrive in toxic soils, which Doc Wei acknowledged. Jing continued, noting that globally, except for soil-free plants, all others contained the V-shaped virus. He emphasized the seriousness of accidental ingestion. Yet not only were the crops on that farm unaffected, they seemed meticulously nurtured. There was an unusual atmosphere about the place, and it was difficult to ascertain if heavy weaponry was present. Jing, mindful of his previous serious injury from Tien, proceeded cautiously, assessing Tien's strength. Doc Wei still viewed the location as just a farm, but Jing considered it akin to a military base. He had meticulously mapped out the farm's layout and planned to use microwave shock weapons to disable any potential threats. Believing Tien wasn't present, Jing anticipated the presence of a perfect mutant beast, increasing their chances of capturing it alive. He ordered the team to move out. Helicopters flew over Tien's field, emitting 3 shockwaves to scan the area. Satisfied, they opened the gate, and a man confirmed that despite the shockwaves, all electronic devices remained operational. He and his soldiers disembarked from the helicopters. Meanwhile, Tien arrived at a graveyard to find his parents' grave empty. Shocked, he insisted it wasn't a joke and wondered who could have done this. Tien received messages from an unknown sender claiming to possess his parents' ashes, challenging Tien to confirm this himself. The sender gave Tien a day to decide, promising to exchange the ashes for Tien's hand and foot along with the holy beast. Tien wondered if the person making these demands was mentally unstable. His parents would be furious if they knew Tien considered trading his limbs for their ashes. They might even haunt him in his dreams. He pondered the significance of the holy sword SST and whether it could be Hay. Meanwhile, Hay went out for a walk, attracting attention from numerous onlookers. Tien texted the person, questioning how they thought they could control him with a box of inorganic substances. He asserted that the person could do as they wished with his parents' ashes, but vowed to make them kneel and apologize to his parents. Tien suspected the person had targeted Hay and feared they might eliminate him once they discovered his abilities. He considered if the person could be the woman from before, though it seemed unlikely. A powerful company like Tianrun wouldn't resort to such despicable tactics if seeking revenge. Tien was left wondering about the true identity and motives of this person. Tien received a warning of a farm invasion, noting that the adversaries possessed high-precision, modern weapons with a threat level of 99. At night, soldiers surrounded Tien's house. They reported thermal imaging detected activity inside the building's perimeter. One soldier gestured to wait, but the thermal image abruptly disappeared, leaving them puzzled about where the intruders had gone. Meanwhile, Hei stood atop the house with Han on his shoulder, visibly angry. Han commented that those people were all bad. Then she instructed her to do as she said and turn them all into compost. Suddenly, all the windows broke and many bombs were thrown inside the house, causing explosions. The head of the soldiers ordered the others to start searching. All the soldiers rushed inside, and after searching, they wondered if there really was no one there. Jing was among them as well. Jing felt something, and then asked them all to immediately go out. Suddenly, a beam of light attacked them all, and somehow Jing and two others managed to escape. Jing wondered how that was possible and if the shock weapons didn't work. They found that the outside soldiers had also died. Jing wondered what was going on in that ordinary farm and why there were battle robots, and how such advanced technology was present. Tien arrived, stating that it turned out to be Jing, and Jing was there to take revenge on Tien. Tien appreciated that and said Jing must have spent a lot of time investigating, which was a lot of work. Jing said that it wasn't too hard to investigate Tien, but he really exceeded Jing's expectations that night. Now that everything was clear, there wasn't much more to say. He wouldn't live much longer anyway, and he would die if the plan failed. Dying there wasn't any different from dying in a hospital bed. Tien relied on their abilities, and the winner would take everything. Nan asked Tien to kill them, saying the people in that company were no good. Tien replied that before killing Jing, he wanted him to confess. Then he asked where the ashes of Jing's parents were. Jing asked what Tien meant. They were both confused. Tien asked if Jing hadn't stolen his parents' ashes. Jing asked if he was kidding. The scene shifted to Sheng, who became furious and threw his phone in frustration. He called Tien an unfilial bastard and asked how Tien could ignore their mother's ashes. Sheng said if it were him, he would give his whole body for their mother. Then he kicked the phone and said Tien didn't even offer the sacred beast, resulting in all the snacks their mother wanted being gone. Some men there asked Sheng to calm down and brought new goods, offering them to Sheng's mother to enjoy. Sheng replied that he was useless, and his mother was tired of eating those dirty things. The two men agreed. Sheng continued that his mother wanted to eat wolf cubs, but those men were all losers in positions of power who couldn't even get a sacred beast. A man tried to make an excuse, but Sheng shouted that he didn't want to listen, just as his mother called him. Sheng calmed down and said he missed her a lot. His mother, completely pale, emerged from the well and referred to Sheng as a good boy. Sheng became emotional as she came out to meet him again. He hugged her and said it was all his fault he couldn't get the wolf cubs she wanted. He asked her not to get mad or abandon him and not to hit him because he would be a good boy from then on and would surely bring them to her. She was going to be happy when she ate them, so she didn't have to be mad at him. It turned out his mother was actually a black monster who said she wanted to eat them. Tien asked Jing if he had stolen the ashes of his parents. Jing was surprised to hear that. Tien thought it seemed like Jing hadn't done it, but it was strange because Jing had clearly been bitten through the neck by Hei, yet he was still standing there. Tien used his power to check Jing's stats and found that he only had 118 hours of survival time left. The evaluation showed signs of evil, and Jing had used the power of evil evolution to save himself from dying. If he couldn't activate the evil mutant gene fusion in his brother within 118 hours, he would be dragged to hell by the same power that saved his life. Tien thought it seemed like the radiation from the plants had triggered the evolution failure, but due to Hei's perfect mutant genes and their fusion, Jing's life had been temporarily saved. Tien then understood that Jing wanted to acquire Hei's perfect mutant genes. Tien said that even if Jing hadn't stolen the ashes, his intentions wouldn't benefit Tien, and he couldn't let Jing leave there. The robots aimed at Jing to shoot. Jing asked them to wait, and suggested that since the ashes of his parents were important to Tien, maybe Jing could help him retrieve them. He emphasized that there was no irreconcilable hatred between them, and proposed turning their conflict into a deal based on evolutionary genetics and self-preservation. Tien ordered his robots to stop. Jing suggested they could exchange resources. Tien asked if Jing could help him find the ashes. Jing replied that he had a vast network of connections, resources, and technology. If Tien wanted to find someone in the southern side, it would be much faster with Jing's assistance than if Tien did it alone. Tien replied that if Jing wished to obtain the evolutionary genetics, that bargaining chip alone might be enough. Even without Jing's help, Tien believed he would eventually locate that person. However, Tien noticed that Jing was emphasizing his connections with Nectar rather than Tianrun, so he asked about Jing's connection with Tianrun. Jing replied that he wasn't a member of Tianrun. He stood independently and had no allegiance to any party's interests. He held no enmity toward Tien, whether for killing Liang, invading the villa, or attacking Rin, all of which were unrelated to Jing. As long as Jing could get what he needed, that was sufficient. In other words, Tien would be a tool for Jing's purposes. Tien commented that it seemed interesting, but Nan wasn't happy about it. Jing approached Tien, suggesting Tien could have the handy rooms, and Jing would get the evolutionary genetics to save his life. A win-win situation. He extended his hand for a handshake, but Tien didn't reciprocate. Instead, Tien crossed in front of Jing and instructed Jing's men to squat in the corner with their hands on their heads, then asked Jing to follow him. Tien led him inside to meet He. Han used her eye skill and noticed a green aura around Jing, signaling to Tien that everything was good. Tien reassured Jing not to be nervous, explaining that this was the gene Jing wanted. Shocked, Jing asked if this was the perfect mutant, questioning how it had come to be like that. Tien replied that if he guessed correctly, He had merged with a human gene during his perfect mutation process, and the human whose genes He acquired was Jing. Based on Jing's genetic fitness, his genes should be able to prevent his evil evolution. Jing was delighted to see the perfect mutant, noting that even the high-ranking mutant beast kings on the southern border who had merged with human genes typically became mindless monsters driven by frantic instincts to feed. However, this one not only had self-awareness, but also followed human commands. Jing believed that as long as he could decipher its genetic secrets and mass-produce it, they could achieve great things. Tien intervened and stated that it was settled. Now it was time for Jing to fulfill their agreement. He showed Jing a number and asked for help tracking it, requesting all call records made to that number and the signal locations over the last 10 days. Tien wanted to see what information Jing could gather, expressing satisfaction with his choice of tools. Jing replied that it was easier said than done. He needed a blood sample and had less than 5 days to figure out the key. Tien remarked that Jing didn't yet have the leverage to negotiate terms with him, so Jing needed to work hard and locate the person as quickly as possible. Jing agreed. Sometime later, a helicopter arrived over Tien's house and landed. A man emerged and approached Jing, questioning why Jing hadn't come to find him at his base instead of calling him there. The man didn't want to be outside. Jing showed him the chat, and the man asked if that was all they had to say after he arrived. Jing replied, telling him not to be too clever and to check the signal of that number. Furthermore, Jing asked him to find the circuits in Tien's house as an apology for using the shock weapons. Tien thought that the man seemed adept at this. Lan pulled out his system and informed Jing that he wasn't the boss, but merely an old man. Tien asked Jing if Lan was truly reliable. Jing replied that Lan was the best with technology. Lan began his work. Tien then asked Jing how he had become a mutant and transformed into such an inhuman, ghostly form, suggesting it was akin to entering the era of gods. Jing responded that it was expected Tien had accessed the contents of his USB flash drive. He admitted Tien was superior in that aspect of human advancement. 10 days after the world changed, Jing's team extracted the V virus from a radioactive planet. This virus was the source of mutations in those who consumed it. Through his experiments, Jing discovered that the V-shaped virus caused biological cells to divide rapidly and greatly increased the likelihood of evil mutations, ultimately creating deformed, short-lived monsters driven solely by their need to feed. Jing believed he might gain inspiration from He's genes in his research. Tien remarked, "So these conclusions were based on extensive human experiments with that virus." Jing replied that he didn't consider what he did to be cruel, pointing out that countless data on human biology throughout history had been derived from cold human experiments. Moreover, before he joined Tianrun, they had already conducted inhumane experiments under Liang's instructions. Rather than clinging to life half-dead, it was better to let their experimental subjects fulfill their purpose and maximize their value. Jing added that he wouldn't mind being a guinea pig for a while before he died. Even as a failure, he represented valuable data. Tien commented that it was truly insane. Jing laughed and said that biological and scientific progress had often been achieved by stepping on the bones of countless people. In such an apocalyptic future, this was unlikely to change. Lan receives the information and then sends it to Tien. Tien receives the information on his phone and, being confused, tells Lan that he didn't give his email address to him yet. Lan becomes frustrated and asks how long they have been living together. With only a photo of Tien, Lan digs up all his information in just 10 minutes. Lan adds that he overheard the two discussing his current skills and warns that if they question his skills again, he will hack their cameras and broadcast them both taking a bath. Tien is bewildered by this threat. Jing reveals that despite Lan being a loudmouth, he still adheres to professional ethics. Jing warns Lan that if he continues to gossip, his payment will be reduced. Lan becomes worried and promises to be quiet. The scene shifts to a scary castle where two guards in white coats are standing guard with their guns loaded. One of them yawns and notices a mosquito in front of his eyes, which turns out to be a hummingbird from Tien. He wonders when moths became so big in such cold weather. Tien warns him to be cautious, noting that the hummingbird wasn't poisonous, but mentioning the abundance of mutated animals nowadays. He speculates that the hummingbird might be a mutated creature or something similar. Just as Tien's hummingbird spy strikes one man on the head, the other guard is shocked and bewildered by the sudden attack. Then Tien takes a shot, rendering both men unconscious with shots to their foreheads. Tien positions himself on the roof of the building, the one responsible for incapacitating them both. From the rooftop, Tien peers inside and observes many people wearing identical attire. One among them declares that the Holy Lord, the true God who created the universe and everything in it, deserves thanks for granting them her will, power, and love. They believe she has bestowed upon them the fruit of hope for reincarnation into immortal bodies. He calls for the commencement of the reincarnation ceremony in the name of their god, Serket. Opening a box containing something significant, the man instructs two kneeling men to partake of it. He explains that next, they must water the fruit with nectar from the sacrifice to ensure its growth, hastening the completion of their reincarnation process. They revealed the body of a dead woman, and the two men began eating it. Tien felt disgust and shot one of them dead. The others panicked and fled, bewildered by what had occurred. Sheng wondered who had disrupted the reincarnation ceremony. Spotting Tien aiming a gun from the roof, Sheng demanded to know who he was and why he had interfered. Tien proclaimed himself their lord and ordered his hummingbird spies to eliminate them all. One person urged others to protect the Holy Lord, but no one listened, focused on saving themselves amidst the slow slaughter. As the guardians were killed, they realized their situation was dire, and someone urged the Holy Lord to flee. Tien descended, expressing disbelief that they were not thieves, but rather despicable scum worse than animals. Sheng asked if Tien was Tien, to which Tien confirmed and demanded Sheng bring his parents' ashes, promising a swift death in return. Seeing a dark entity emerge from a dead person's mouth, Sheng warned Tien that killing him would prevent Tien from locating the ashes. Tien warned against provocation. The dark entity took on a frightening human form, prompting Sheng to suggest they distract it with nonsense until they could escape. Slowly, the creature transformed into monstrous forms, roaring as more appeared, each with wings. Tien drew his gun, calling the monsters ugly and disgusting, but found his bullets had no effect against their tough bodies. As they rushed to attack him, he dodged and opened the doors of his warehouse, hoping to find a variety of lethal weapons. He considered a bazooka or something similar, but realized he didn't have enough points to purchase them, having spent them on seeds just the day before. Summoning his hummingbird warriors, Tien watched as they attacked the monsters, only to find their firepower unable to penetrate the creature's thick skin. He reflected that while he had expected ordinary thugs exploiting the apocalypse for profit and evil, he hadn't anticipated they would possess such bizarre monsters. He resolved to bring out a few of his heavy combat warriors. Tien found a hiding spot while Sheng called out to him, questioning his sanity. Tien realized he was in a tough situation without any albino corn left, and ordinary weapons were ineffective against the monsters. Contemplating blasting their eyeballs to buy time, Tien saw the monsters closing in. As they attacked, Tien barely dodged their lightning-fast strikes, realizing their speed was impressive. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the area, throwing Tien off balance. The scene shifts to Yuan in her office. As the telephone rang, she answered and identified herself as being from the Southern Military Police Station. On the other end, an old man expressed relief that she finally answered, describing an explosion near his house accompanied by strange noises, the result of mutant beasts causing havoc. He pleaded for Yuan to come and investigate, as he was with frightened children. Yuan agreed to come and asked for the location of the explosion. Afterward, Yuan instructed the police force to mobilize a cleanup crew and follow her, mentioning the possibility of encountering level 2 or 3 mutant beasts on the outskirts of the city. One man acknowledged her orders to inform the others. Another eagerly asked if there truly were mutant beasts of that level in the city, expressing excitement at the prospect of capturing one alive for a reward from their leader. Wan cautioned that level 3 mutant beasts shouldn't be underestimated, emphasizing they were far more challenging than regular level 1 beasts. Meanwhile, Tien was struck against a wall as the monsters closed in on him. Despite shooting out their eyeballs to slow them down, his ribs were broken, and he resorted to using ancient medicinal-grade tomato to heal himself. Sheng remarked that Tien was on the brink of death yet still fought back, noting he hadn't even fought back when he was severely injured and was likely to become a meal for the monsters. The creatures leaped to attack Tien, knocking him outside the wall. Sheng wondered if Tien had died, likening the monsters to pigs. He recalled Tien's warning not to enter that room. Unaware of Sheng's caution, Tien thought the attack had almost struck him, and he was seriously injured. He heard cries for help and turned to see who was aiding him, discovering numerous women imprisoned with chains, pleading for assistance. They were crying and scared of the monsters, wanting to go back home. Tien wondered if the girl who was sacrificed was also considered goods, and how many people Sheng had already killed. He saw the monsters approaching and knew it wasn't good. The women were terrified because the monsters were getting closer. Tien decided he wouldn't let the monsters come any further. He then noticed a place that looked like a warehouse. It seemed like they weren't just using the women as goods. There were also lots of food, gold bars, jewelry, and antiques. He didn't expect to find such valuable items hidden in the warehouse. Tien then saw a sword in the hand of a statue. He quickly climbed to the top of the statue and took the sword. To his surprise, it was a real Tangdao sword. Its foreign technique was one of the most advanced in the world. The blade was strong, unbreakable, and incredibly sharp, representing the pinnacle of sword forging. It was a great sword and an absolute killer. Tien took the sword and heard the women's screams. He thought the monsters were getting closer, which wasn't good. So he decided to try the sword to see if it could cut through the monsters. He rushed forward and slashed the sword at a monster. It worked, but it wasn't enough. With his current strength, he couldn't kill them in a single blow. This only angered the monsters, so he decided to get out of there first. As the monsters entered, Tien led them to follow him. They reached an open area, and the monsters rushed to attack him. He took out his sword and slashed at a monster. One monster used its tail to attack Tien, slamming him against the wall. Tien freed himself and realized it was hard to cause them fatal damage by attacking the surface. Dragging the fight out was a disadvantage, so he needed to start with their weak points. One monster attacked Tien, and he thought about its weak points. Then, he slashed the sword at the monster's head and finally managed to kill it. Then Tien saw the next monster. On the other side, Sheng inspected his precious collection, thinking about how his brothers would tear Tien into pieces, leaving not even a scrap of bone. Just then, Tien arrived and pointed his sword at Sheng. Sheng said it was all over, wondering how it was possible. The outer shell of the working ants was impenetrable to bullets, and he couldn't believe Tien had killed them. Sheng warned that if Tien messed with his superiors, they wouldn't let him go. Tien replied that if he could kill monsters, he wasn't afraid of Sheng's superiors. Saying go to hell, Tien prepared to slash Sheng with his sword. But then, someone yelled for him to stop. Tien saw Yuan arrive with a gun and asked him to put his sword down. Sheng acted innocent, pleading for help and claiming that Tien was trying to kill him, urging the police to shoot Tien. Tien insisted that the police should point the gun at Sheng, not him. Yuan asked what he meant, and Tien told her to look around. She saw women tied in chains, looking terrified. A police officer informed Yuan that some of these women were reported missing before, and he recognized them from the photos. There was no mistake. Yuan was shocked to hear this. She also saw the supplies and wondered what was going on. Another officer told Yuan that there was a major case a female body had been found in the main hall in a grotesque manner. Several cult members were shot dead, and there were also 2 corpses of mutated beasts in the side hall. Yuan then ordered everyone to stay calm, assuring them that everything was under control. She told them to notify the bureau and the hospital, as well as some cooperative units, and to get all their spare hands to come and support. Sheng was arrested, and as the police took him away, he taunted Tien, asking what he could do now. Tien felt angry but calmed himself and took his sword back. Yuan recognized Tien and asked if he remembered her. Nervously, he asked who she was. She reminded him about the accident 3 years ago when they both went to identify bodies. He agreed, recalling that there was a female officer with him and appreciated her good memory. He remarked that it seemed she guessed what he was up to when she stopped him. She replied that, although his actions were understandable, he couldn't act rashly. She introduced herself and explained that Tien's DNA from the car accident 3 years ago led them to him. She asked him to stay calm and listen to her words. She mentioned that Sheng's situation wasn't over yet and that the police wouldn't kill Sheng. She acknowledged Tien's extraordinary strength, saying that even though there were many of them, they wouldn't be able to stop Tien from killing Sheng. However, she emphasized that the Yanhuang Federation was still under the control of the military police and the parliament. She continued, explaining that this wasn't the place for vigilante justice, and asked him to trust the military police. They wouldn't spare any guilty person. It was their duty. She asked him to cooperate with their investigation and tell them what he knew. When he agreed, she thanked him for his cooperation. After that, ambulances, more police, and civilians whose daughters or wives were missing arrived. The rescued girls came outside wearing white cloths. The injured ones were taken to the hospital, while those who were unharmed reunited with their families, leading to emotional scenes. As Yuan was escorting Tien, a policeman asked what he should write in the records for the deceased. She replied to state that during the arrest, they encountered fierce resistance, so they were forced to fight back, resulting in serious injuries and deaths on the other side. The officer agreed. Yuan then told Tien, "Let's go." As Tien walked away, he saw a dead body being taken away, its hand visible outside the stretcher's curtain. A girl with her mother approached to thank Tien, calling him a savior. She said that if it weren't for the noise he made, which attracted the military police, they might have all been sold as toys to the rich and powerful and eventually sacrificed. She thanked him again. Tien wondered about the mention of toys. Yuan asked the girl if she knew anything more. The girl replied that she used to be a member of a self-help society, but they lied to her, saying it was just a mutual aid society. They claimed that by bringing people in, they could buy food at low prices, but after a while, she discovered their true purpose and tried to escape. They found her and locked her up. Before she was captured, she saw the location of their transaction ledger. Yuan asked her to explain in detail. They had a long conversation about it. Meanwhile, two people were watching from a distance. One of them remarked that the Holy Lord controls all, then instructed the driver to leave. After everything, Tien was sent to live in a room. He told the officer that most things were sorted out, so he asked if he could leave since he still had things to do at home. Out of the window, Yuan and an officer were watching over Tien. Yuan said she didn't agree with the way the situation was being handled. The officer responded that, since ancient times, merits and demerits have been irreconcilable. Even if Tien had done good deeds, it couldn't cover up the fact that he committed a crime. He was just a citizen and didn't have the authority to take the law into his own hands and judge or kill others. Yuan agreed, saying he had no right to do so, but added that was only true if they found the missing girls before he did, and if the higher-ups had issued an order for his detention. The officer said they were waiting for a response from the city council, but it was unlikely the higher-ups would tolerate the presence of a dangerous man like Tien. Yuan mentioned that nowadays the world had changed, and both the military and the police were severely understaffed. She added that it's difficult to predict the future of law enforcement. Even though the higher-ups hadn't responded yet, the man was rushing to convict Tien. To put it bluntly, she suggested he must be panicking about his dereliction of duty. Therefore, she prepared to send Tien's evidence of law violations directly to the leader's desk the moment they received a reply from the higher-ups. She emphasized that this would make it easier for him to do his job. She questioned whether such lenient treatment would truly bring justice to the girls who were killed and trafficked, expressing doubt. Chen became angry and told Yuan to watch her mouth. He asserted that he didn't care about her background. He was the sheriff and she was his subordinate. He ordered her to detain the suspect and keep him under guard. Just then, someone approached Chen and asked what he was doing. Chen was startled because the person who approached was his superior. Respectfully, Chen asked why he was there. The man who arrived was Chief Inspector Zhen from the Military Police Department of Handing Province, accompanied by Senior Police Officer Yi. Zhen remarked to Yang that Chen had been well taught, becoming more promising, though he wasn't adept at catching criminals but seemed good at making enemies. Chen explained he was following orders from higher-ups. Zhen inquired whether it was Yang or Dong giving those orders. He then instructed Chen to stay put and recite the police rules 20 times. Addressing Yuan, Zhen mentioned that Bureau had briefed him over the phone about the situation and asked her to take him to Tien. She agreed and informed him that Tien was in Cubicle 03, inviting him to follow her. When they approached Tien, who was sitting silently, Zhen asked if he was indeed Tien. Tien stood up and confirmed his identity. Zhen introduced himself as Chief Inspector Zhen from the Provincial Department of Handing. Tien wondered about this development, and Zhen, remaining seated, remarked that if a case required a senior official like himself to personally interrogate Tien, it indicated that Tien wouldn't easily get out of this situation. Zhen chuckled and reassured Tien not to be nervous, explaining that he had come with a file he wanted Tien to see. He believed Tien would be curious about the changes in the two mutated beasts. Showing the file, he said the information was specifically brought for Tien's attention. He handed the file to Tien, who asked why him. Zhen replied that it was meant for people like Tien, those who understood such matters. The file detailed a mutated beast discovered in the Karangma Mountains by a patrol officer 5 days earlier. When they surrounded it, they found it feeding on humans. Later, they discovered human faces on its back, indicating it was growing more intelligent, sometimes even outmaneuvering their troops. Zhen asked if Tien understood the implications. Examining the photos, Tien noted that the monster's intelligence and behavior were increasingly human-like. He wondered if their genetic barriers had been unlocked. Zhen nodded in agreement, explaining that they had moved beyond simply combining genes from different animals to enhance physical attributes. They had successfully incorporated human genes to enhance intelligence, giving rise to a new species they called Beast Kings. At least 5 such advanced mutant beasts had been identified in Yanhuang, and that number was expected to increase. When Tien asked why Zhen was revealing these secrets to him, Zhen pointed to a jar placed nearby containing 3 red objects. Tien began to grasp the significance. Jen confirmed that these were the 2 eggs that had ceased to hatch after Tien shot 2 believers who had carried them. Lab tests confirmed they contained genetic material from insects, animals, and a significant portion of human genes. Tien asked what this meant. Jen replied that in the southern region, there was a strong likelihood that a beast king was hiding and reproducing among its kind. Tien asked to wait. But with the destructive power of the beast king, how could it possibly be lurking in the city undetected? Jen said that this brought them to another issue. The ledger. Tien asked if he had found the ledger. Jen answered that although the beast king had a certain degree of intelligence, it was still far from evolving to the level of a normal human. It was impossible for it to create an organization in just a few dozen days after the mutation started. Tien asked if Jen was telling him that there were humans siding with the mutant beasts, and why that was happening. Jen replied that it was unknown. Tien asked why Jen was revealing all this to him. Jen replied that he wanted to give Tien some idea of what was going on, and he was sure that Tien would be able to make a better judgment of the situation. Tien asked for clarification. Jen answered that in light of Tien's violent attack, which resulted in the deaths of many people and caused extremely serious consequences and negative social impact, the military and police departments were ordered to arrest him. An execution notice for the detention of the criminal Tien had been issued. Yuan was about to say something, but Jen stopped her. Tien slammed his hand on the table and commented on what serious consequences and negative social impact he had caused by killing those gang members, saying such laws and rules really made him laugh. Jen told him not to be so angry and just listen. Now that the world had changed, Jen was going to be brutally honest and say that in the future, the military and police in the cities might not be able to protect all civilians. But until the existing social system collapses, they still remain the most powerful forces. According to the current evolution speed of the mutant beasts, there was a trend towards integrating the military and city police departments. This would mean the military police would take over the cities. Unlike the city police, the military police had zero tolerance for violations of the law and were as ruthless as war machines. They could shelter Tien now and wipe his record clean, but they wouldn't have that power once the military police take over the city. Tien asked Jen to clarify what he was trying to say. Jen replied that it was simple. They wanted Tien to join them. They could give him a privileged status, and even if the military police take over the city in the future, Tien could still have some special powers. Tien asked if Jen wanted him to join the military police. Jen explained that having an official status wouldn't be a bad thing for him. It would ensure the protection of him and his family. Tien said he needed some time to think about it. Yuan suggested returning Tien's sword to him and stated that they wanted his answer by the morning of the day after tomorrow. Yuan added that if Tien agreed, he should fill out the form, and if he didn't, she would bring the enforcement team to find him the day after tomorrow. Tien asked how someone could say such cold words. She handed him the letter and the sword, saying there was no point in flattering her, but if he joined the military police, none of this would be a problem. Tien said he would surely give his answer by the day after tomorrow. Tien then saw some men passing by him with a policeman, so he asked Yuan if those people were involved in the buying and selling recorded in the ledger. Tien felt like their faces were familiar and wondered if they were members of the Southern City Council. As one of the men turned to look at Tien, he realized the inspector was telling the truth. These weren't just some rich and famous people, they were members of the parliament. Tien didn't expect that even they were involved and wondered if they were only engaged in buying and selling or if they were already standing against mankind. Tien returned home and checked on the level 4 Divine Gain cherry tomato. He asked Han if she would help him if he became a military policeman. She agreed. He told her that in that case, he wouldn't be able to be with her as much, and she might cry when she was alone at night. She replied that she hoped he wouldn't give up on what he wanted to do because of her. She reminded him that 3 years ago, he gave up his job and came back to run the farm, and she felt she had been dragging him down. He replied that she didn't do anything wrong. He made that choice on his own. As he moved his hand over her head, she said she didn't want to be protected by him all the time and wanted to grow up fast as well. She continued that no matter what choice he made, she would surely support him. She had Hei and Grandpa Nan to take care of her as well, so she wouldn't be afraid. He commented that she had really grown up and that he would now leave her in charge of spreading the growth potion on the Divine Gain cherry tomatoes, adding jokingly that there should be no slacking off to watch cartoons. The scene shifts to the prison, where a man approached Sheng's cell. Sheng kept smiling the entire time. The man passed a small seed-like object into Sheng's cell. Sheng picked it up and ate it. The scene shifts to Tien, where they take blood from Hei and give it to Lan. Tien said that it was as he promised. Lan asked if this was the perfect mutant beast, noting that unlike the Beast Kings, this one didn't have huge changes in its limbs and vital signs, and didn't look that powerful. Tien replied that there were many directions to perfect mutation. The mutation of the existing Beast Kings might not be in the right direction. The right path to perfect mutation could involve increased strength, a change in physical form, or an increase in intelligence. The process of mutation varied, so it was naturally impossible for it to be exactly the same every time. Lan agreed with Tien's words and added that he had the wrong impression initially. Each organism had a different genetic makeup, so the same perfect mutant gene might produce different results in different organisms. Then Tien asked how Jing was doing. Lan replied that Tien had destroyed a cult, and Jing was in jail for a while. If Tien hadn't given that blood sample, Lan was afraid his boss's grave would be filled with grass. The scene shifts to Jing, where surgeons were examining his body and found that the bone spurs grew back in less than 30 minutes after being removed. Currently, they were growing even faster, making surgery impossible. Lan arrived with the blood sample. Jing sat up and commented that it was great. He asked the doctors to analyze the sample immediately, noting that he only had 24 hours left. Upon analysis, a surgeon reported changes in the arrangement of the 20th pair of chromosomes. According to the blood cell analysis, the density of the skeleton was more than 10 times that of ordinary dogs, and it contained 79 chromosomes, one more than the average dog. Jing realized that Tien had unlocked the genetic code. The surgeon explained that the extra chromosome would greatly increase its size, strength, speed, and bone density. Another surgeon added that the extra chromosome could almost be called divine, and that these were the genes of a perfect mutant, not the genetically messed up ones in their monsters created by the V-shaped virus. The first surgeon noted that although the success rate wasn't high, they would try to replicate it. Jing ordered them to get ready to replicate the process. The scene shifts to Tien, where he checked on the level 4 Divine Gain cherry tomato, which had entered the ripening stage. Now, Tien would be able to observe its effects. As he examined it, he thought about the potential impact of a Divine Gain fruit in its ripening stage. Tien realized that the evolution path after consuming a level 4 fruit involved awakening the genetic memory of the bloodline genes, enhancing the original data of the body, and acquiring the ancient talents of the race with an activation probability of 80%. He noted the different types of potential enhancements. Intelligent brain type was the human body could affect electromagnetic fields, allowing abilities such as hypnotism, mind reading, and controlling electric machinery with an activation probability of 4%. Divine type was the human body could develop foreign abilities such as immortality, wings, and extreme speed, with an activation probability of 4%. Ancient divine type was this included abilities like controlling weather, water, fire, and other substances, with an activation probability of 0.4%. Tien was amazed at the possibilities and began to consider the implications of these abilities. Tien thought that the intelligent brain type and the divine type were already tempting enough, but the probability of atavistic evolution was too high. If he were to evolve into the most useless of all, the atavistic type, it would be a big loss. He decided to ask the system for advice. Tien wondered if he could reset his evolution if he ate a level 4 fruit and evolved into the atavistic type. He discovered that the host could continue to eat level 4 fruits, and if other types of evolution were activated afterward, the host could choose to keep one evolution type. In other words, as long as he had enough divine gain fruits, he would eventually be able to evolve into the ancient divine type. The scene shifts to Zhen, who asked Yuan if Tien had agreed. She replied that Tien contacted her and said he would send the application form the next day. Zhen was happy to hear that and said that his trip to the southern side wasn't in vain. She asked if he was leaving. He replied that his superiors had already urged him enough, and he was planning to go back after finishing the cult case. He had only come to the southern side because he had been specially appointed by the Ministry of National Security to be in charge of recruiting special talents. Yuan commented that they had arrested Congressman Li and Guo for more than 10 hours, but the political department hadn't taken any action, and she felt that something was wrong. Zhen asked if there had been any movement from Wang's side. She agreed and asked Zhen to stay on the southern side for a few more days as she felt uneasy. The next morning, Tien was coming out of his entrance gate to submit the application form. As he stepped outside, he noticed a dead body hanging from a nearby tree. At first, he wondered who the girl was, and upon closer inspection, he realized it was the girl who had revealed Sheng's plans when Tien saved the girls. Shocked, Tien rushed towards her. A lawyer representing Congressman Li and Guo met with Zhen and stated that he had been commissioned by the Southern Side Council specifically to handle the case concerning the detention of the two congressmen, Li and Guo, by the military police department. Just as Zhen received a call from someone, the lawyer asked him to pick it up. Zhen picked up the call and was shocked to hear something. The scene shifts to the hospital where the mother of the deceased girl was crying, wondering how this happened. Tien sat by her side, feeling sorry for the woman. The lawyer was with Li and Guo there, mentioning that they must have suffered. The woman continued crying, and as she glanced towards Li and Guo, the lawyer assured them that he would take care of their case so they wouldn't feel pressured. Smiling, Lee asked what kind of pressure they could feel. The woman approached Lee, calling out to him. He turned and asked who she was. The woman explained that her daughter had spoken about Lee when she returned, before her death, and had implicated Lee in some business. She rushed at him, accusing him of taking her father's life and threatening to kill him. Lee kicked her, causing her to fall, telling her not to touch him. Yuen approached the woman to ask if she was all right, then told Lee not to go too far, reminding him that they were in a military police station and questioning how he dared to use violence there. The lawyer intervened, praising Yuen as a fine person and stating that it was the woman who had attempted to attack them, with Lee and Guo merely defending themselves. Lee remarked that it wasn't very polite. The lawyer asked the woman to mind her language, noting that Congressman Lee and Guo had already been released on bail and should no longer be called prisoners. Yuen was shocked to hear this. The lawyer urged the woman to calm down, pointing out that she had attacked the congressman for no reason and could be held accountable. Yuen protested that it was impossible and questioned how they could have been released. The lawyer responded that he would issue a warning to Yuen, as she had attempted to arrest a member of parliament. He cited physical evidence, documentary evidence, witness statements, victim statements, criminal investigation reports, the defendant's statements and defenses, expert opinions, examinations, inspections, identifications, investigations, and laboratory records. He continued, adding that there were also audiovisual materials and electronic data, emphasizing that nothing less than this evidence would convict a congressman. Tien listened silently to it all. Yuen asserted that they had apprehended the ringleader, and a testimony was only a matter of time. The lawyer replied that, unfortunately, the maximum detention period of 24 hours had elapsed, and he would now be taking the men away. Walking away with disdain, he commented that she was exerting herself to manage the case, but he hoped that in the future, she would be able to distinguish correctly between criminals and law-abiding citizens to prevent similar incidents. He mentioned their busy schedule, implying they didn't have much time to cooperate with her investigation. Furthermore, he dismissed the credibility of the witness she mentioned, stating that the witness had already been diagnosed by a doctor and provided a psychiatric certificate, rendering their testimony invalid. She warned him not to assume it was over and vowed to keep watch. The lawyer asserted that it was a direct order from the Ministry of National Security. If she doubted him, she could verify with her superior officer. The lawyer concluded that he had simply followed formal procedures in his office to retrieve Lee and Guo, and as promised, the witness would later be transferred to the custody of the Southern Side 4th Hospital. Yuen was shocked to hear this. Just then, the lawyer noticed Tien looking at him, and he felt a chill down his spine. The three of them got into the car and drove off. Meanwhile, the woman cried, lamenting that her daughter had been right. They couldn't do anything to those people. If even the military police station couldn't punish them, who else could? Tien noticed a worn-out form there, realizing it was his application form. After tearing it up, he hurried away and reached his farm. There, he found that the level 4 Divine Gain cherry tomatoes were ripe and needed to be harvested immediately. He gathered them all, totaling 2.5 kilon. After eating some, he sensed that the 47th evolutionary chromosome had activated within him, completing a successful evolution. This was an atavistic evolution type, enhancing his ability to hard-avoid awakening skills and doubling his basic attributes. The scene shifts to the lawyer's car where he tells Lee and Guo that they had managed to contain the situation. Given that only a few people knew about the matter, he assured them that with proper follow-up, the impact on them would not be too severe. He advised them to work together to calm things down. Lai was smoking and remarked that they understood, suggesting that they could handle the lower-class people with condolence money and supplies. Guo disagreed, pointing out that public opinion on the internet still mattered, especially with photos circulating of them shaking hands with the victims' relatives and distributing condolence money. He suggested getting reporters to write more favorable stories about them and holding a press conference to refute rumors, which would easily sway naive people and rehabilitate their reputation. Lee grumbled about the annoyance of having to pretend for such fools. Guo urged patience, emphasizing that this was a crucial time for their transformation into emperors, and only by appeasing the masses could they secure their future food supply. Lai responded that he understood, but suddenly, a sword severed Guo's head, shocking Lee. Looking up, Lee realized it was Tien. From atop the car, Tien casually asked about the food. Lee, stunned, demanded to know how Tien dared to do such a thing, reminding him that Lee was a congressman and Tien hadn't been warned about the consequences. Tien was courting death. Tien calmly stated that since they had consumed that thing, only blood could cleanse them, as they no longer deserved to be human beings. Without hesitation, Tien killed both of them. After parking the car and cleaning up the blood, Tien noticed a small living object emerging from the car. He crushed it swiftly, then proceeded to eat something himself. Tien sensed the successful completion of his evolution, acquiring an atavistic type. His awakened skill, named Flash, doubled his basic attributes, reflecting that he had consumed the 40th Divine Gain Velheru tomato, which was still the weakest evolution. Tien ate more, feeling stronger and ready for another evolution. He digested everything thoroughly before continuing with the atavistic type, feeling satisfied for the time being. Feeling different, Tien sensed his evolution taking a new direction and obtained a rare item. Upon inspection, he discovered it was an intelligent brain, enhancing his basic attributes similarly to the atavistic type evolution enhancement data. Intrigued, he decided to test out his telepathy ability. Activating it, Tien found he could sense living creatures within a range of about 10 meters. Spotting a bird nearby, Tien focused on it. He heard the bird wondering about rice because it was hungry. Tien realized that when he touched a living creature, he could sense its thoughts. But it wasn't enough. Leaving the bird, it remarked that humans were bad while birds were good. Tien considered that before resetting to a new evolutionary path, he should contact Lan. Tien arrived at a peculiar building and connected with Lan via electronic communication. He informed Lan that the person confined in the hospital room wasn't the intended target. The prisoner had been substituted with someone who looked remarkably similar. Lan reassured Tien not to worry, promising to find him no matter what. Soon, he located Sheng and sent Tien a map, cautioning that the target was constantly moving and periodically out of range of the electronic eye. Tien had to proceed cautiously as Lan wouldn't be able to assist him during those times. Tien studied the map and realized Sheng was underground, explaining why he couldn't sense him earlier. The scene shifted to a man in white clothes walking along an underground canal. Tien arrived, announcing he was looking for Sheng and immediately attacked with his sword. However, Sheng reacted swiftly, dodging the strike. Tien noted Sheng's improved reflexes but warned he wouldn't dodge the next blow. Tien managed to sever one of Sheng's arms, but with incredible speed, Sheng leaped to the other side of the canal. Tien questioned if he was trying to escape. Sheng continued to smile, prompting Tien to leap across the canal to attack him again with his sword. Tien discovered that Sheng had disappeared and found bugs in the area. A monster approached Tien from behind, chastising him for taking so long to arrive. The monster apologized, explaining that it had recently evolved into an adult and hadn't yet adjusted to its new body. With bugs swarming around Tien, he swung his sword vigorously to fend them off. Sheng returned to human form and urged Tien to forget the incident, lacking the energy to punish him. The monsters were shocked to see Sheng's injured arm, but he dismissed it as insignificant, stating he was in the midst of evolving. Tien attempted to strike Sheng's head again, but Sheng vanished once more, enraging the monsters who questioned Tien's audacity to attack the Holy Lord. Sheng reappeared behind the monster, advising better control, while the bugs continued to swarm around him. The monster apologized, admitting its current lack of skill. Sheng ordered it to kill Tien. The monster agreed and approached Tien, promising Sheng that he would return to fetch him once he finished. Sheng insisted they forget it and leave Tien alive, needing to recharge after completing his evolution. The monster faced Tien directly. Tien charged at the monster, declaring his disdain for those who boast about themselves. Meanwhile, Sheng returned and had to return to his mother, deciding to pupate there, covering himself in white clothes. Tien battled the monster fiercely. The monster acknowledged Tien's difficulty, pondering how an ordinary human could possess powers similar to its own. Tien's appearance didn't suggest evolution, and the monster wondered why Tien could evade its attacks, as if predicting its moves. Tien thought he was toying with the monster to read its movements. As long as he focused, Tien knew every move the monster made. Tien asked if the monster knew him. The monster replied affirmatively, but noted Tien didn't recognize his opponent. The monster intended to give Tien a gift, admiring Tien's resilience and the beautiful scene of a girl hanging from a tree. Just then, he grabbed Tien's sword. Tien insisted the bugs should be flushed down the drain. The monster asked Tien if he knew who he was dealing with, dismissing him as just a mere human. Tien retaliated against the monster, triggering memories of a scene where Wang knelt before Sheng. Sheng told Wang not to settle for being a minor mayor, challenging him to work with Sheng instead. Sheng promised to grant Wang an immortal body and elevate him beyond ordinary humans. Wang eagerly agreed, stating he would do anything for eternal life. Sheng placed something in Wang's mouth, emphasizing the need for worship from believers, particularly young and lively women, as sustenance. Wang accepted, pledging to offer tribute to the Lord. The monster reflected that it wasn't wrong to seek strength in a post-apocalyptic world to survive, where the ecosystem favored the strong and deemed the weak as prey. He believed those lowlifes deserved to perish, acknowledging that helping him evolve would provide them sustenance for his ascension. The monster asked Tien what he had done to him. Tien thought delving into someone's mind was exhausting. He then opened his inventory and consumed an ancient, high-grade medicinal carrot, fully restoring his stamina. He told the monster that he had figured out his identity and hadn't expected Mayor Wang to be such a coward afraid of death. Curious, the monster asked how Tien knew Wang's real identity. Tien replied that he had read the monster's memories, filled with arrogance and extreme self-interest. The monster questioned how this was possible and speculated if Tien was an evolved human. He admitted he had never heard of an evolved human with such abilities in the southern region. According to the Holy Lord, evolution required consuming the fruits of hope. Tien asked if the monster meant those slimy, disgusting bug eggs, asserting that Sheng didn't need such a repulsive method for evolution. It was more like parasitism than true evolution. Perplexed, the monster asked what Tien meant. Tien explained that he had seen in the monster's consciousness how the bug's consciousness competed with him for control of his body. It was evident from the monster's subconscious that it was prepared to undergo evil evolution, and it was only a matter of time before Wang's consciousness disintegrated. Tien asked how long Wang's personality could endure before becoming a mindless monster. The monster warned Tien not to liken him to lowly ants, stating that the egg he consumed was second only to the prince's. Even if his consciousness could no longer dominate the body, he had become a superior being, shedding the fragile and useless human form. Tien wondered about the prince and speculated whether Sheng had consumed a higher-level egg. Nearby, he noticed a living body. Concerned, another monster suddenly attacked him. Tien marveled at how quickly it had hatched. Tien's hand is severed by the attack, causing him to fall into the canal. Wang congratulates Sheng on the birth of the prince. Sheng is angered that Wang couldn't kill a human and now has to do it himself. Wang denies this, saying that Tien was a Samsung evolver. Sheng, the monster, remarks that there really was a survivor on the southern side. Wang agrees, saying he wasn't good enough for that. Sheng adds that no matter how much he evolves, Tien is still a low elven human without any physical enhancements, and what a waste of the third-level eggs his mother gave Wang. Wang asks Sheng to look at Tien. Tien takes out the ancient medicine-grade carrot and eats it. Others are shocked at how a human can regenerate his hand. Sheng comments that it's interesting. Tien thinks that while the ancient medicine-grade carrots are easy to use, repairing flesh takes time, and if they notice this flaw, Tien will be in trouble. Sheng remarked that Tien's hand had grown back so fast that he changed his mind about wanting to kill Tien. He mentioned he'd like to have Tien's genes, but found the idea of just eating him boring, especially since Tien had many secrets. Instead, he proposed a deal. Tien asked to hear about this deal. Sheng replied that evolved beings like them, superior to human races, should unite forces. To put it simply, the land's poisoning had already caused a severe food shortage, compounded by evolving beast kings. Given current human technology, it was only a matter of time before humans were eliminated from Blue Star. Low-level, weak creatures like humans would become resources for the strong. Only the evolved could adapt well to the new environment. Sheng asked Tien to join them, seizing the southern side before major beast kings took over. They could enjoy food, survival resources, and higher evolution levels together. Didn't that impress Tien? A life ruled by them awaited. Tien replied that Sheng's speech was impressive, but it was a pity that humans weren't merely his blood bags, and he warned Sheng not to underestimate them. Sheng realized the negotiation had failed and expressed curiosity about Tien's abilities. Although now Tien could only be Sheng's nourishment, Sheng attacked Tien, telling him to go to hell. The scene shifted to Tien's house, where everyone else was farming. Han felt a sudden pain, causing her to drop the food from her hand. Nan asked what was wrong. She reassured them she was fine, attributing the pain to a sudden throbbing in her chest and dizziness. She believed she would feel better after some rest. She thought the sensation was intense, reminiscent of heart palpitations, and it gave her a sense of foreboding. Han asked Nan to continue collecting fruits, while Tien reminded them they needed to stock up on food before the second destruction wave arrived. Nan began to feel better and insisted she wouldn't hold them back. The scene shifted to Tien, who screamed. Sheng remarked that he had finally discovered Tien's secret. Tien could only repair his body after consuming that strange fruit. Given this, Sheng decided not to let Tien eat it, leaving Tien with both hands restrained. Sheng pointed out that it was now 2 against 1, yet Tien still posed a significant threat to his own kind. Uncertain of what to do next, Sheng admitted he couldn't bring himself to kill Tien. Meanwhile, Wang floated in the canal, injured by Tien. Sheng expressed growing curiosity about Tien's fruits. Ignoring Wang's pleas for help, Sheng offered Tien a deal. If Tien revealed his secret, Sheng would consider granting him a quick death. Just as Tien's small hummingbirds arrived to attack Sheng wondered why there were still more. Tien seemed relentless, pulling out all his cards. The firepower of the tiny creatures was useless against Sheng's hard armor. They were mere stray bullets that could be more dangerous if they hit their own side. Tien knew this, but it wasn't his purpose. Sheng remarked that the mosquitoes were noisy and wondered if they were supposed to tickle him. Tien struck Sheng's sword with a hummingbird, then swung his sword at Sheng. Sheng was surprised, and Tien noted that while the hard armor was troublesome, the joints were vulnerable. He landed a solid slash on Sheng, causing Sheng to scream loudly and injure his legs. Tien moved back, realizing he couldn't continue like this. He needed to improve. He took out some fruits to eat. Sheng fell to his knees, admitting he had just evolved and hadn't eaten anything yet. He lacked the energy to repair his body and felt extremely hungry. Wang asked Sheng to save him, explaining that the previous battle had drained his energy, making it impossible for him to stand. He pleaded with Sheng to take him back to Sheng's mother so Wang could repair his body. Wang emphasized that Sheng needed him to control the southern side and that evolving had taken Wang considerable effort. He didn't want to die. Sheng replied amidst the noise and his hunger, stating he had just evolved and needed something to eat. Lamenting his lack of energy, he compared Tien to a hard-to-catch flea, adding that he was in a terrible mood. Wang urged him to simply eat and not infiltrate the southern side's military police department, emphasizing his desire to live and the effort he had put into reaching his current state. Sheng clarified that Wang's role was to expedite food collection and that promoting him to level 3 was a reward for his hard work, though he hadn't anticipated Wang being so ineffective. He then mentioned that their mother was nearing the final stage of her evolution, predicting that once she emerged from her cocoon, their clan would control the entire southern side. And when the time came, Sheng's people would be able to produce as much as they wanted. He was so hungry and needed to eat to replenish his energy. Wang denied this, but Sheng killed him, stating that after being distracted for a little bit, they would be able to fix themselves again. However, it felt so good to eat a level 3 evolver, and Sheng felt energized. Tien realized on-screen that his atavistic awakening activated the bloodline's genetic memory, enhanced the body's original data, and acquired the ancient talents of his race, with an evolution probability of 80%. Tien was shocked that Sheng had eaten his own king, and there were no more fruits left in his inventory. After eating dozens of precious level 4 fruits in a row, all the acquired evolution types were of the atavistic type. Sheng commented that if he ate Tien as well, he would be able to level up his strength. Tien ate the last one, realizing that Sheng had become so fast that Tien couldn't escape. Sheng approached Tien closely, his pointed hand nearing Tien's eyes. Sheng was suddenly stopped by something and wondered what was happening, unable to move his body. Tien realized he had finally achieved it. The evolution path had reset, and evolution was completed successfully. The awakened skill was gravity mastery. Field expansion. The basic attributes remained the same, enhanced by atavistic evolution data. Tien thought that not only had the ancient divine type been restored, but also the super rare rule system. He understood that the ancient divine type evolution was categorized into elemental, superhuman, and rule systems. The composition of the Blue Star world was governed by rules such as gravity, acceleration, potential energy, and inertia. Mastering these fundamental and essential powers allowed one to become a god in the truest sense. Tien believed that the rule system was undoubtedly the most powerful evolutionary branch of the ancient divine type. He discovered that the range of gravity control was 3 meters. Field expansion allowed the range of gravity control to be expanded tenfold in a short period, but consumed a lot of mental and physical energy. He took control of Sheng's body, causing Sheng to scream. Tien landed a solid blow on Sheng. Sheng thought it was clear that Tien was only a level 3 evolver, yet he had become stronger than before. Tien believed that the power of the ancient divine type evolution was already formidable at level 1. Consuming level 4 or higher crops and meat would further increase his abilities. He wondered about the future evolutions this could bring and found it thrilling. His heart raced with excitement, relishing the incredible power and addictive satisfaction it brought. Exhausted and coughing, Sheng knelt down, pondering how Tien had become so powerful in an instant. Tien effortlessly shattered Sheng's hard armor with a strike through the air. Realizing he couldn't continue like this, Sheng decided to escape. He knew staying there would mean certain death, so he began to run away. Tien saw Sheng attempting to flee and chased after him, using his power, but it didn't work as expected. Tien realized he still lacked sufficient control over gravity. As Tien advanced, he found that Sheng had managed to escape, leaving a trail of blue blood behind him as he fled. Running, Sheng reached a giant hole where his mother was hatching. He apologized to her, admitting he hadn't lived up to her expectations and had failed, feeling deeply disappointed. Suddenly, there was a blast from the direction Tien had come. Tien entered and remarked that it turned out the sewer exit led to the ground floor of the municipal building, explaining why Sheng's actions had gone undetected by the military police. Wang had found a good hiding place for Sheng. Tien mused ironically that Sheng had never expected to die at the hands of the religious cult he personally worshipped. A lingering ghost of irony. Sheng reflected on his time with his mother as the floor began to shake. Finally, his mother finished evolving. She emerged from the hole, now giant as well. Tien commented that he had thought Shing was desperate enough to consume his own kind of evolvers, and questioned who Shing was referring to as mother. Shing became angry and asked Tien who he was calling Likantahi. Despite his mother being the most loving in the world, she had a bad temper. She often beat him, refused to give him food, called him a fool, and if he didn't get first place in an exam, she would slap him and make him kneel. However, when they were surrounded by a group of mutant ants, she was the one who saved him while he ran away, feeling like a coward for leaving his mother. Tien thought Sheng was in good shape, but found him quite strange. Sheng told Tien he wouldn't allow him to say anything more and spoke rudely. Sheng told his mother that he was a bit hungry and low on energy, asking her to save him. After all, a newly evolved BDIT would still be weak. She agreed and said they could both stay together. Tien thought it wasn't good, especially when those monsters joined. He believed Sheng took the initiative to let the Break King devour him, wondering what the point was in going that far. It didn't seem right that those two merged. Suddenly, Sheng's body started shining brightly. The scene shifts to the research lab, where they were thrilled about successfully replicating the divine gene, which was a significant achievement. One of them immediately suggested informing Jing to inject it into his body. Suddenly, one man noticed the table shaking vigorously and wondered if something strange was happening. Another replied that he didn't feel anything unusual. The first man insisted they check the shaking equipment, but another dismissed it, stating Jing's life was more important. Meanwhile, a reporter was broadcasting that an abnormal seismic event had been detected at the municipal building, suspected to be caused by a high-level mutant beast. Military and police forces from the southern side surrounded the area, with helicopters circling overhead. Yuan was among them in one of the helicopters. Suddenly, a blast erupted from a building, revealing a level 8 Beast King, a massive ant queen, wreaking havoc. Yuan was shocked to witness this and questioned how such a powerful beast could appear in the city. The reporter enthusiastically commented on the spectacle, anticipating it would make a sensational headline. Amidst the chaos, Tien shouted loudly, asking Yuan how he had arrived there. The reporter and cameraman were momentarily stunned. The reporter admitted he was so excited that he accidentally yelled out, revealing they were from the Southern Side Daily Journal. Yuan sharply questioned if they had lost their minds, demanding to know who gave them permission to fly there, emphasizing the danger and ordering them to retreat. The reporter defended himself, stating as a journalist he couldn't miss such a big story. Yuan pointed out that high-level Beast Kings typically appeared only in frontier and remote areas, not in the southern side. The reporter was elated at witnessing the high-level Beast King firsthand and being the first to cover such a story. Soon, they noticed something suspicious around the Beast King and instructed the cameraman to zoom in on the blue light moving near it. They zoomed in closely and discovered it was a human. Tien, flying there, considers that after altering his own gravity, he could achieve a floating state. By reducing the friction of his body and combining it with his improved attributes, he could speed up to incredible levels. However, maintaining afloat would continue to drain his mental and physical energy. He sees on the screen the ancient divine-type rune system human evolver and his skills. Gravity mastery, field expansion, with a range of 3 meters, can be leveled up by consuming crops above level 4. The field expansion allows him to expand his gravity mastery range tenfold in a short period, consuming a lot of mental and physical energy. He summons the insects, thinking the bugs would help replenish his wounds. At that rate, he cannot kill all the bugs, and moreover, the gravity mastery attack range is too small to cause any lethal damage to the Beast King. And there is also a steady stream of bugs to heal that would run out of energy at that rate. If Tien uses the field expansion to deliver a fatal blow, that should be. But then he realized something and abandoned that plan, fearing that using the field expansion would leave him at his lowest point of mental and physical strength. If it didn't kill the Beast King with a single blow, falling into a coma would likely result in his death. He was struck by the Beast King and knew this was a serious problem. Several blasts landed close to him, but Tien managed to dodge them. Yuan called out to Tien, promising cover fire and instructing him to target the core of the Beast King. Destroying its brain would halt its recovery. Tien considered her words carefully. Tien noted that the core of the Beast King was typically near its brain, the hardest part of its armor. Yuan warned him to be cautious, noting the distinctiveness of the surroundings in that area. Tien understood and continued attacking the monster, wondering about the exact position of its core. As he approached the Beast King, he observed the bugs gathering around what seemed to be its core. With the assistance of the military police, he unleashed his full mental power. Determined to end it, Tien prepared for the final blow. After unleashing his full powers to attack the Beast King, Tien began to fall, but helicopters swooped in with nets and saved him from crashing. Yuan commented on how close it was. Seeing Tien, she wondered about his identity, considering him the mysterious person. Finally, the Beast King was defeated. The reporter announced that at 6:14 in the morning, a super-large mutant appeared at the municipal building, causing damage over a 10-kilometer radius. It was estimated to be at least a level 8 Beast King in size and energy fluctuations. The creature was now eliminated by a powerful blue humanoid, covered in a light that made it difficult to see clearly. Many people watched the report, with the reporter speculating whether this was a new government weapon or a new type of mutant, admitting they had no further information. The Hongli-Su store was unreachable. A boy in a hoodie watched the broadcast and commented that the boy was an evolver. The scene shifts to Tien lying on his bed, realizing that the second wave of destruction was imminent, with only 8 hours remaining. He was urged to focus on upgrading his shelter's level and defenses to prepare for its arrival. Wondering what it could be, he recalled fainting after expending all his physical and mental energy. Fortunately, he hadn't been unconscious for too long, and the system reminded him that the current farm defenses were inadequate for the second destruction wave. Watching the countdown, Tien realized the second wave would likely bring more devastation than the first. Projecting forward, humanity's current technology might only hold out until the third wave, after which civilization could collapse entirely. Opening his point screen, he saw he had 7980 points but needed a few more to upgrade the shelter to level 2. He decided to harvest another batch of crops to complete the upgrade, despite having consumed a lot in the recent battle. There was plenty of space in the system's inventory, and he wondered if he could store a weapon there to retrieve as needed. Tien decided to place the Tang horizontal sword in his inventory, and to his surprise, it worked. Upon inspection, he found it was at level 1. He wondered if real-world items could be leveled up by being placed in the inventory, speculating that as the level increased, the sword would exert greater power. Getting up from bed, Tien realized now wasn't the time for him to rest. Knowing time waits for no one, especially considering the time it takes for crops to mature and be harvested. He acknowledged that Officer Yuan had given him timely advice, though he'd have to thank her properly another time. Leaping out of the hospital, Tien later saw Yi and Yuan at his bed, discovering he had escaped. Yi asked Yuan if she intended to bring him back. Yuan dismissed the idea, stating Tien wouldn't agree. Yi expressed concern about Tien causing trouble outside. Yuan countered by asking if Yi believed the Southern Side military police could apprehend a mutant capable of taking down a Beast King alone, noting that the strongest mutants in the military only had enhanced strength and physical abilities. Yi acknowledged Tien's capabilities, but assured he didn't mean to pressure Tien into anything. He continued that the meaning was that they should continue to win over people with such great power, and they couldn't force him to do what he doesn't want to. He was probably angry at their incompetence. Nowadays, the military police were so weak that they couldn't even protect a girl. And why would he trust them? Yuan said that she will convince her dad, too, and she didn't think that he had any ill intention towards humanity. On the contrary, he was on their side. Don't bother him yet, just wait and see what will happen. She was looking forward to how powerful Tina will be in the future. He asked her to go ahead and tell him. Then Tien reached back to his home. Han and Nan were so happy to see him back. Tien apologized for making them worry. All three hugged him, and Tien thought that he had gotten a lot stronger. But what about his superpower? Tien asked them to let him go. Han was lifted by him and told to keep lifting her. Tien saw Nan's body and commented that he had evolved as well. Nan agreed and said that he woke up like that Lady Day and he didn't know evolved him. Han asked him to see that she had gotten stronger as well. Tien saw the stats of Nan and Han and thought that the members had evolved into the atavistic type. He found that the anti-radiation corn and peppers had matured. Tien said that a new batch of crops had also ripened, so let's start harvesting, and they were going to upgrade their farm. Then all agreed, and upon getting the peppers, Tien thought that the camouflage chili pepper was a purple rare item. When consumed, it allows one to enter a state of camouflage for 10 minutes, blending in with the surrounding environment and evading sound wave detectors, thermal imaging technology, and optical detectors. He thought that now the points were enough. He was asked again if he was sure that he wanted to spend 80 W points on the level 2 shelter upgrade coupon. He found that after the upgrade, the shelter's defense strength and area would be greatly increased, and the shelter privilege would be granted. The player would also receive a new skill named Flaw Mastery. Tien purchased that, and the upgrading started automatically. As it was upgrading, he saw that there were now 3 hours left for the second destruction wave. The original shelter's properties were preserved while livestock sheds were renovated. The fish pond and planting field were also renovated. A thermal energy detection radar tower was built with a range of 30 kilometers, and an electromagnetic interference radar tower was constructed with a 20-kilometer interference range. Turrets were under construction. When Han saw the fish pond, she remarked that it had become so big, resembling an artificial lake. Tien found that the upgrade was completed. The planting field had been expanded to 300 acres, the livestock area to 3 acres, and the fishing area to 5 acres. Tien was congratulated on successfully upgrading the shelter to level 2 and received a gift package, unlocking the permission disguise and the skill Life Flaw Mastery. Tien thought it now resembled a military fortress, which was cool but still somewhat conspicuous. He considered hiding the appearance of the level 2 shelter to make it appear like level 1. It disguised itself as before, and Tien thought that activating the disguise would make outsiders see the old, dilapidated farm as it was before. This would save him from many problems. He had just unlocked a new skill. He discovered that at level 1, he could see the data of all objects, while at level 2, he could see the flaws in all living things and identify their most fatal weaknesses. He wondered about these fatal weaknesses and how he could use this power against others, understanding if there were any limitations on the use of flaw mastery by the system. He found that there were none. No race or being in the world was without weaknesses. Even the rarest ancient divine evolvers had hidden flaws. Tien realized that with this skill, he could defeat evolved beings in the future with a single move. He also noticed that his level 4 divine gain, the cherry tomatoes, had ripened and he was asked to harvest them as soon as possible. Tien thought that with this skill, he could potentially reset Han's evolutionary direction. If he didn't insist on ancient divine types, these fruits should be enough for Han and him to complete their evolution. Han and Hei both picked tomatoes to eat. Han told Tien that she was the one who kept resetting, and they were all atavistic. She felt like she was going to be sick. He replied that if she ate some more, maybe she would win the next one and couldn't lose to Hei. She replied that she wouldn't lose and started eating several tomatoes. Hei was shocked to see that. Suddenly, something happened, and Han admitted she did that. Tien found her intelligent brain evolver skill was magnetic field mastery of the Eye of Truth and appreciated her. They noticed something happened to Hei as well. Han was happy and commented that it was so cool. Tien realized it was the Sacred Beast skill, King's Pressure. He found that there were 30 seconds left for the second destruction wave. The scene shifted to Jing, who had just been injected with the good virus. He was asked how he was feeling. Jing replied that he was in very good shape now, not just because his physical state had fully recovered, but also because he believed he had successfully replicated the divine gene and become a pioneer in the era of the gods. He found that he couldn't stop trembling. The last 5 seconds of the second wave of destruction started. As it finished, the water waves came so badly, totally changing the weather. Tien thought that the active, flowing water life on Earth would disappear from there, with the third destruction wave coming in 60 days. Tien was determined to savor that period. He thought about the water sources when suddenly a gigantic circle formed in the sky, causing lightning strikes. The scene shifted to a ship in the middle of the sea where they discovered that the ship wasn't receiving any signals or radar. All communications were lost. A crew member called the captain to come out and see the ocean. As they checked, they were shocked. The captain wondered about their mutated sea creatures and noticed that the color of the ocean had become strangely unnatural. They questioned if this was only in their area or if it affected all water sources. The entire sea turned red, teeming with mutated creatures. A man was getting closer to the divine gene, and by obtaining it, he said that he didn't expect Jing to be able to actually create it. Just as the skeleton tail came to grab the divine gene and cause some damage to the man's hand, the man asked who the person was that dared to do such a thing. He found Jing and said that his evolution had been very successful and that he arrived so quickly, so the man must have triggered something. Jing came in front of the man, asking how he got the password for the safe box. The man replied that Jing was indeed a descendant of their family, and the headquarters was right to leave that responsibility to Jing as he had truly extracted the divine gene. Jing realized that it was Ming and asked how Ming had come there. Ming replied that he came to deliver orders from the headquarters and then referred to Jing as his brother, stating that from that day, all of Jing's research projects in the southern region would be taken over by Ming, and that Jing had to return to the headquarters that day to report on his work. Jing asked if Ming was the only one there. Ming replied that it was obvious he hadn't come alone and that Jing's evolution data had been reported to him a long time ago. So how could he have come without any preparation? Then a lot of men came up behind Jing with guns. Jing didn't understand and asked what Ming was talking about. Ming replied that it seemed Jing had a personal agenda. Why didn't Jing report the successful research to the headquarters immediately? Was he trying to monopolize the achievement? Even if they hadn't seen each other for a few years, Ming remarked that Jing was still the same. Domineering, shameless, and justifiably robbing him of everything, calling it profit recovery instead of robbery. The headquarters and the Bai family had given Jing everything, including research funding and technical support, so his results should naturally be shared with them. But Jing didn't have to worry. He had created such great benefits for the headquarters that even if he returned now, he would still receive a huge reward. Ming wasn't robbing Jing of his credit. He was taking him back to enjoy his success. Jing asked what there was to enjoy about happiness, and said he was afraid he would be dragged off to become an experimental subject in the Divine Creation Project as soon as he landed on the ground. Ming replied that even Jing himself had used his own body for experiments, so it shouldn't be a problem for him if they were to study that experiment. As far as Ming knew, Jing had only made 2 copies of the divine gene. He used one on himself, and the other was in his hand. Ming wanted such a precious sample. Lan and the other researchers arrived as well. Lan told Jing that he didn't have anything to do with their family, and as he was a worker, he should be allowed to leave. Ming commented that such an important person couldn't leave like that. Jing asked Ming if he thought he could use them to threaten him. Ming agreed and said that by taking control of the Southern Side Research Institute, he could show Jing that even though Jing had evolved, he was still a human with a mortal body. He couldn't remain unscathed in the face of their many guns. Ming told Jing to stop making meaningless resistance and to hand over the divine gene obediently, as his current situation was sad and embarrassing. Jing thought that with his current physical strength, there wasn't any way he could withstand that many assault rifles. But with the blessings of extreme speed, he should be able to escape. Ming said it seemed like Jing didn't want to cooperate, and it was said that some evolved people had super healing powers, so Jing should still be able to live with broken arms and legs. Then a blast occurred. The scene shifts to Tien's house, where he had prepared food. Han commented that it looked lovely. Tien said there wasn't anything she didn't like to eat. Nan asked Tien why there was a feast. Tien replied that it was to celebrate the fact that they had all the evolutionary directions, and as a result, he put a lot of effort into the meal, adding many high-grade ingredients. He mentioned that the second destruction wave had occurred and everyone was still at level 1, so he wanted to see everyone level up sooner. Han said that even though they had such a celebration, He didn't come to eat with them. Tien thought about the conditions for He to transform back into the Beastman form. First, He deactivated the Beast King mode due to his physical strength being too low, weakening him to the point of being unable to maintain the mode. Tien mentioned that He liked his current state a lot, so Tien made a separate meal for He to eat outside. Han agreed, commenting that He looked more handsome. Suddenly, Tien received a warning that 2 heat sources were rapidly approaching the farm. He detected that they were humans moving at 38 meters per second. The targets had taken heavy damage, their body temperature dropping, and they would arrive at the farm in 23 seconds. Tien wondered about the speed of these humans, thinking only mutants could achieve such velocity. Using his power, he identified Jing carrying Lan. Jing appeared at the entrance gate, curious about what was happening at the farm. He felt an invisible force holding him back, and it seemed Tien wasn't going to help him. Knowing Ming would find him soon, Jing began to turn away. Just then Tien arrived, flying with his gravity skill, and remarked that Jing had gotten himself into a big mess. Jing realized it was Tien. Tien asked if Jing was about to leave with such a disappointed look on his face. He then allowed them to enter, expressing his interest in Jing's evolutionary direction. Jing reminded Tien that just a few days ago it was merely a rundown farm, but in a short time it had become a fortress. Yet, what Jing saw outside still appeared run down, which baffled him as current technology couldn't achieve such perfection. It was incredible. He asked Tien to save them, expressing his fear of dying. Tien replied that he could save Jing, but wanted to know what he would gain in return. Jing answered that he could provide information that Tien would find interesting. As they entered, Jing asked if Tien's evolutionary ability was to control gravity. Tien questioned how Jing could deduce that. Jing explained that Tien had killed the Beast King in the southern city center. The wounds on the Beast King showed signs of hypergravity compression, a phenomenon Jing had studied in videos. Though he didn't get a clear view of the cave, the person's powers resembled Tien's, especially their ability to levitate similar to high-speed flight. This consistency pointed to gravity control as their shared characteristic. Tien replied that it was indeed interesting. Despite Jing and Tien having different ideas about evolution, Jing had grown to respect him more and more. Tien welcomed them to the farm. He arrived with Nan and Han. Jing was shocked to see He had grown giant. Han told Tien that Jing had turned green. Jing wondered what the green light meant and asked if they all had evolved. Tien asked why he was surprised. Jing replied that he was amazed at the speed of their evolution. He thought the rate of perfect mutations was unusually high there, especially with He evolving to the size of a small mountain. Tien asked how much longer Jing would remain in a daze because Lan wouldn't last long. He asked Jing to hand Lan over to him. Jing agreed, and they all took Lan inside to lie down. Tien fed Lan a carrot and, upon coming out, informed the others that they needed to wait for Lan to wake up. There were many bullet wounds on Jing, which he was tending to, and he asked Tien if that was all. He questioned if Lan, being just an ordinary human, needed surgery for such serious wounds. Tien replied that he had his own methods. Jing realized he had crossed the line. Tien asked him to explain what had happened. Jing explained that he had replicated Hei's evolutionary genetics and used them on himself, which not only allowed him to survive but also resulted in a perfect mutation. He showed Tien the divine gene and mentioned that before escaping the research institute, he had destroyed some data and managed to grab the second potion. Tien wondered if it had the same effect as his divine fruits, and if replacing Hei's atavistic gene could achieve atavistic evolution. He questioned if it meant replacing other evolutionary types could do the same. Jing explained that he had achieved perfect mutation, but dismissed how he sustained such serious injuries as unimportant. He quickly added that the head office had discovered his attempt to keep his research secret and sent his brother to take over, intending to bring him back for further research. Fortunately, he had managed to escape their pursuit. Tien asked how Jing could think it wasn't important. He pondered what kind of family would conduct research on Jing. Han asked Jing how his brother could harm him and declared that if anyone dared to hurt Han, Tien would deal with them severely, possibly by lethal means. Jing became emotional and explained that not all family members were like Han and Tien. He had a good brother. Han looked at Tien and thought she had been dependent on him from the start, so no matter what happened, she would always stand by his side without hesitation. Tien remarked that although they hadn't known each other for long, with his self-healing ability and speed, a rational and calm person like Jing should be able to make the most favorable judgment and escape on his own. Escaping should be simple for him, but what about Lan? Jing replied that he hated owing favors, especially to meddlesome idiots. Tien thought Jing was a ruthless, science-obsessed maniac with no regard for life, but now it seemed Tien had misunderstood Jing. Jing stated that he wouldn't stay there long. News of his escape with the one and only divine gene had already been sent to the head office. It wouldn't be long before they launched a comprehensive search for him. With their ambition and power, they would turn the southern side upside down to find him. The allure of it was too powerful, enough to change the world. Tien commented that if what Jing said was true, could he escape with an ordinary person? Even if he managed to escape from the southern side, where would he go? Tien pondered that what appeared to be the most common atavistic gene was now a coveted treasure fought over worldwide. Jing explained that he knew he would be hunted down if he deceived the head office. He had planned to quietly leave the country with his materials and equipment, but he hadn't anticipated being betrayed by someone within the head office. His assets in the EU were frozen, so he would have to find another way. He decided he was going to Storm Island. Storm Island is surrounded by the three major countries of Yanhuang, the European Union, and ancient Egypt. Due to its unique terrain, storms sweep through the area year-round. Despite its lack of strategic importance and scarce mineral resources, Storm Island remains unclaimed. Only a few indigenous people live there, relying on animal husbandry and fishing. The level of technology and civilization on the island is notably primitive. Jing revealed to Tien that he had built a small base there several years ago during his biological research expeditions, which he had never disclosed to anyone. That made it the ideal hiding place for him now. Tien asked what exactly the head office was. Jing explained that the headquarters was a monopoly group comprised of several large families involved in nearly every profitable industry. The five major families, Bai, Ren, Lan, Qin, and Zhong, formed the cornerstone of this organization, representing the highest centers of power. After the world changed, Jing realized that there were infinite possibilities that could exist with their radioactive plants. He proposed the Divine Creation project to the head office, but there were differing opinions within the office about the project. Many opposed it, arguing that it violated humanitarian principles, but some families saw immense profits in it. Without informing the Bai and Zhong families, Jing was allocated all the resources to establish a research institute in Southern City under the guise of researching new medicines. Jing's true intention was to utilize the head office's resources to achieve his goals. He didn't want his research results to merely serve profit and hegemony. Despite belonging to the Bai family as an illegitimate son, he lacked influence in both the head office and the family. Whenever he needed approval, he had to concoct irresistible lies, believing he had everything under control. However, it seemed that was never truly the case. Tien agreed and said that he would send Jing to Storm Island. Jing was surprised and mentioned that they couldn't simply sneak onto a ship anymore, especially with the polluted oceans where boats could be attacked by mutated sea beasts. He also noted that the head office was definitely monitoring all airplanes, which made him afraid. Tien asked who said they needed a boat and then led Tien outside. Once there, Tien explained that maximum returns required maximum investment. He revealed a helicopter with stealth paint, which would help them evade radar detection. Tien assured Jing that it would safely transport him and Can to Storm Island, along with all the necessary lab equipment and living supplies. Jing asked why Tien was helping him, wondering if Tien believed Jing's plan was too extreme. Tien replied that after witnessing numerous brutal events, his perspective had changed. He emphasized the urgent need for radical changes in the human environment, especially given the pollution of the seas. Tien added that if Jing accepted his investment, Jing would need to adjust some of his concepts. Jing said that if Tien really helped him reach Storm Island with all his equipment, he promised that someday in the future, when Tien needed him, Jing would travel thousands of miles to help him, disregarding any opposition, and clear the world for him. They shook hands, and Tien reminded Jing to remember his promise. Until they were sent away, Jing couldn't live or eat at Tien's place, so he asked for help in feeding the sheep for a few days. The scene shifted to Ming, who was speaking with his father and seemed angry that Jing had resisted. Ming hadn't expected that outcome despite making extensive preparations. He acknowledged Jing's unexpectedly strong evolutionary abilities, but reassured his father not to worry, stating that Jing wouldn't get far. Ming had already dispatched people to inspect and monitor all airlines and transportation hubs throughout the southern region. Additionally, the medical industry was under their control. Jing was just an ordinary person, heavily injured and without access to systematic medical treatment. It was certain he wouldn't survive for long. As soon as he appeared, they would catch him immediately. Father remarked that despite everything, Jing was still a member of their family, and they couldn't easily explain if they harmed him. Ming replied that whether Lan lived or died had nothing to do with their family. Father ordered Ming to handle the matter, to which Ming assured him to leave it to him. Father then mentioned hearing that Jing had achieved perfect mutation. Ming confirmed this. Father continued, expressing surprise that his own son was the first perfect mutant among the 5 major families. He noted that if not for Jing's deviant thoughts, making Jing his heir would have been a good choice. He emphasized that the family's heir must excel in every aspect, urging Ming not to disappoint him. Ming responded that if he couldn't capture Jing within 3 days, he would relinquish all his privileges in the head office and the family. Father reminded him that it was a promise Ming had made, expecting good news in 3 days. The call ended, and Ming instructed a man to bring Ren because he wanted to ask her some questions personally. The man agreed. Jing was doing what Tien told him, feeding the pigs, while Tien sat nearby commenting that Jing was too stingy with his work. Jing replied that he had been doing such tasks since he was 8 years old. Tien mentioned that even the young master of the Bai family had done similar work before. Jing explained that he was an illegitimate child in his family and lived with his mother until he turned 8. If the family hadn't been so thinly spread, they might never have acknowledged his existence. But he didn't mind. He didn't feel like a true member of the family, but having their surname provided him with the resources he needed. Tien thought it sounded like the scandalous dramas of wealthy families were really true. He received notifications on his phone, and Jing asked what was going on. Tien replied that he had something interesting to discuss with him. The scene then shifted to Ming, who wanted Ren to tell her everything about the people Jing had interacted with since arriving in the southern region, but the information gathered didn't differ from what Ming already knew from her sources. Ren told him that Jing had destroyed a lot of data before leaving the institute, so there wasn't much information she could provide. He asked if there was anything special. She replied that all the information she had was already shared, and since he was an insider, he should know she hadn't spent much time with Jing. Ming commented that Ren seemed somewhat hostile towards Jing. Ren said it might be because of Jing's questioning and his destruction of her carefully prepared laboratory after arriving quietly in the southern region. Ming explained that the decision was made by the 3 families because Jing had stolen the divine gene belonging to them and betrayed them. Ren thought that judging from the seriousness the headquarters had placed on the matter, the power of the potion must be far beyond her imagination. She pondered on the divine gene and considered those inhuman monsters in the research lab. Besides the mutation of Jing's body after injecting the semi-finished product, the result of that genetic alteration was Liang's death. Then she got an idea that Tien might be the one responsible. Ren told Ming that the head officer's real research was actually about transforming human beings. Ming replied that as far as he could say, it wasn't something she should delve into. At present, the 3 families had an opportunity to bridge the power gap, so he needed to find Jing and asked her to play her part. Ren thought he was quite unpleasant and pointed out that with the power of Ming's family, they should have already blocked Jing's escape routes. If even the family couldn't find Jing, how could a mere manager without access to high-level secrets do so? Ming told her there was no need for criticism, and that since the head of the Ren family hadn't granted her the right to know, it meant she wasn't taken seriously in her family, blaming it on her status as a woman without the capital to be part of the core. Ren thought she wouldn't share anything even if she knew more, apologized, and said that was all she knew about Jing. After all, she considered herself a woman with limited abilities. After excusing herself, Ren was leaving when Ming remarked that this was why he always said women should stay at home and raise children. Outside, Ren pondered for a moment before getting into her car and calling Tien. She identified herself and requested to meet him urgently, knowing Jing was at his home. Tien initially feigned ignorance, but Ren insisted that Tina knew what she meant and urged him not to disappoint her rare kindness. She promised to arrive at his farm within half an hour. Upon reaching the farm, Tien was already waiting. Ren wasted no time and asked him to hand over Jing. Tien brushed off her request as presumptuous, questioning her sudden appearance and accusations. Ren pressed him not to play games, revealing that her men had obtained a DNA comparison report suggesting Jing's involvement with Tien. She emphasized that their personal ties shouldn't interfere with headquarters affairs and threatened to escalate the matter unless Jing was handed over, as she hadn't yet reported the findings to headquarters. Just as a sniper attack targeted Tien, he managed to dodge it. Ren was shocked and wondered where the sniper shot had come from. Ming arrived with his men, expressing surprise that Jing had been hiding in such a rundown farm. He sarcastically thanked Ren for unwittingly leading them there and warned her to consider how she would explain tipping off the traitor to his family. Ren was stunned that Ming had found them and asked if he had followed her. Ming replied that he didn't even trust his own family's illegitimate son, so he certainly didn't trust her. He explained that he monitored all devices, expecting to provoke her, and she fell right into his trap. Frustrated, Ren decided to sneak Jing away and hand him over to his guardian, thinking Ming's comment about women being stupid was directed at her and Jing alike, calling them both garbage. Tien and Ren found themselves in the sniper's crosshairs, and Ming ordered everyone to stay put and settle things peacefully. Ming told Ren that as long as she didn't oppose him, she could remain a member of her family and he wouldn't harm her. Then he asked Tien to return Jing. Observing Tien's modest appearance and apparent financial strain, Ming questioned what benefit he could gain by sheltering a fugitive. He insisted that Tien hand over Jing, promising wealth and resources in return. Tien hesitated, wary of Ming's well-equipped men. In response, Tien criticized Ming as someone who only spoke highly of himself and exuded arrogance. He unleashed his hummingbird warriors, catching Ming's men off guard. Ming's forces were bewildered by this sudden attack. He ordered his snipers to target both Tien and Ren. Ren sought cover behind her car, but as bullets headed towards Tien, he used gravity control to redirect them harmlessly to the ground. Ren and Ming were stunned by Tien's ability. Tien asked Ren why she still seemed hesitant, suggesting she didn't fully trust him yet. Han arrived, flying in, and mentioned she couldn't control so many people at once currently. Tien reassured her it was fine, given her current level. He then used brainwave control on Ming, leaving him immobilized. Ming was shocked by his inability to move and asked if Tien was a perfect mutant. Ren explained to Tien that she was cautious for her own safety. Tien understood and swiftly dispatched Ming's remaining men with his hummingbirds. Ming accused Ren of trickery and demanded to know when she had discovered it. She revealed that she suspected an insider around Jing, prompting her to check her phone for bugs. Finding one, she borrowed a colleague's phone to send a message to Tien, staging their exchange as part of a ruse. Ren noted the advantage of Ming bringing all his men there, saving them the trouble of capturing them individually. Ming grew increasingly furious and trembled with anger at the revelation. Jing emerged from behind, pressing the sharp point of his tail against Ming's neck, declaring that he deserved to die. He proclaimed that this was no longer a world controlled by money, power, or armed force. Ren's aide remarked sarcastically to Ming about facing death at the hands of a woman and the illegitimate child he despised, questioning how he felt now. Ming shouted not to dare touch him, threatening that both families would pursue her and asking if she could afford to kill the heir to the Bai family. Ren countered that the Bai family wouldn't investigate the disappearance of an heir. Confused, Ming demanded clarification. Jing reminded Ming that his surname was also Bai. Ming asked if Jing wasn't afraid. Jing retorted, questioning why he should be. If he killed Ming, Jing would be the sole child left in the Bai family. He challenged Ming to consider whether the family patriarch, despite his affection for Ming, would recognize Jing as his heir after such an act. Ming scornfully replied that Jing was born of a lowly woman and would never be acknowledged by their patriarch. Jing scratched his neck nervously and told Ming that he didn't have to make that decision. Ming replied sternly, accusing Jing of daring to eliminate a potential threat to the Bai family, but knowing he would never receive recognition from them. The family's enforcers wouldn't let Jing go unpunished. Jing asked why the Bai family's approval was so crucial, having already lost everything else and having nothing left to fear. He himself was from the Bai family. With resolve, Jing decapitated Ming. Tien, witnessing this, asked Jing where the Bai family was located. Jing dialed Ming's father on his phone, and when he answered, Jing apologized for disappointing him. Ming's father recognized Jing and revealed that he was also his son, urging him not to do anything reckless and to return with Ming. All would remain unchanged for Jing. Jing sadly acknowledged that only in times like these did his father remember him, and he had the unfortunate news to share. Ming, the future head of the Bai family, had died by Jing's hand. Father was shocked to hear that Jing had killed a member of their own family. Jing calmly stated that he hadn't considered himself part of a family since he was 8 years old. He formally informed his father that if the search for him continued, he would willingly surrender his assets to the authorities or to Zeus Pharmaceuticals and Lion King Corporation, entities interested in his discoveries. Now, as the sole heir to the Bai family, Jing asserted his right to inherit, suggesting that if his father wanted to preserve their kinship, he should allow Jing to lead the family into prosperity after his passing. Father grew increasingly angry at Jing's words. Undeterred, Jing continued, acknowledging that if his father chose to use all his power to seek revenge for Ming's death, Jing would accept it. However, he warned his father that as long as he was alive, he would dismantle the Bai family and bring ruin to anyone bearing the Bai surname, ensuring they met their end disgracefully. Jing declared he would not return to Yanhuang anytime soon, advising his father to take care of himself. He cautioned that if his father exhausted himself with anger, the Bai family might not survive until the day Jing chose to return. Then he ended the call and noticed that Lan was piloting the helicopter, which had landed in the field. Tien asked Jing if his father would compromise, noting that even the most level-headed person would become distraught upon hearing of their beloved son's death. Jing smiled wryly and remarked that this was the dilemma of holding a position of power. Despite immense anger, one must remain composed and weigh the consequences thoughtfully. He cynically added that people like his father operated primarily for profit. Firstly, his father was the head of the Bai family, one of the 5 major shareholders in the company. Secondly, he was Ming's father and lacked the courage to relinquish control. For the next few hours, the Bai family would focus their attention on Jing, oblivious to Tien's and Ming's independence. Even if Tien discovered Jing hiding on the farm, he wouldn't report it to the company or the Bai family to prevent the Ren or Lan families from claiming credit. As long as they eliminated all the people Ming had left behind in the southern city, Tien's farm would remain safe and concealed. Ren asked what Jing thought of her, considering she also played a role in Ming's demise, putting them in the same predicament. Jing explained that it wasn't that he didn't want to trust her, but he couldn't see a compelling reason for her to help him. Siding with the head office seemed the least risky option for her. Ming's sudden appearance caught him off guard, and as a precaution, Jing apologized for his delayed reaction. He expressed concern that Ren, whom he found untrustworthy, might inadvertently expose Tien's identity. Tien interjected, insisting that Jing hadn't harmed her yet and asked Ren to let her finish. Ren acknowledged it made sense to collaborate with Tien temporarily, but expressed a preference for taking a chance. She believed they shared mutual trust more than with the people at the head office. Additionally, Ren mentioned a sexist comment she had overheard from Ming, which irked her. She noted many differences in treatment among the 5 major families based on gender and bloodline. Ren had decided to assist Jing, hoping it would help her ascend to become the head of her family. She found it amusing to think about the reactions of their male counterparts when 2 unwanted children seized power. She asked Jing if he looked forward to that day. Jing found her perspective intriguing. Afterward, Jing and Lan departed in the helicopter. Observing the city's devastation, Lan remarked that Tien had effectively cleaned up all the mess, erasing every trace. He then asked Jing if he had accepted Tien's request. Jing recalled Tien's insistence that he couldn't condone human experimentation without the individual's consent. Jing had promised to modify the executive program accordingly. Jing paused, reflecting that enforcing the Nuremberg Code in such an apocalyptic world seemed naive, but he recognized the need for some rules to restrain himself from descending into moral oblivion too swiftly. Besides, survival had become so challenging that experimental subjects wouldn't be in short supply. Lan nodded, remarking that this was the boss he knew, despite his seemingly inhuman remarks. Jing mused that they might cross paths again in the future, when all were at the pinnacle of their power. With that, they departed the ruined city.